kick in. I'll see if it's live on the YouTube side. I'm always terrible about starting these things. People have like nice timers and stuff. Mine's always a rough start. So we're live. I've got Paul with me here from Coding After 30, and I'm gonna let him introduce himself a little bit. The title kind of says what he's done and who he is a little bit. So I want him to go into more detail about that. And then I've got a bunch of questions that I want to ask him. In the last live stream, I had people in the chat, and some people mentioned that I wasn't interacting with the chat. For these interviews, I kind of like to not focus too much on the chat and keep the conversation going. And we leave like questions and Q&A stuff for the end. So if you've got questions, if you ask them early on, they'll be answered towards the end of the video. I'll go through the chat log and make sure that Paul and I answer as best as we can to whatever questions you have, but I won't be paying attention to it too much during the stream. And so, Paul, introduce yourself.
Hey guys, I'm Paul. I'm like Coding After 30 on YouTube. The reason why I decided to like call my channel that name, because I started, coding in my mid 30s, but I made so many mistakes that I'm 40 now. But I'm like, you know what? I'm going to stick to Coding After 30, because I'm sure there's a lot of people out there who are thinking, how realistic is it to switch careers in your 30s? So to give you an idea, prior to becoming a developer, I literally most of my life, I ran a MMA and martial arts gym for like over 15 years. I mean, so that was my job. And if you think about it, it's so different than coding. And I kind of like that example, because it means if anybody was willing to put in the work, you'll get there. Now, for me, that work was like over a span of like inconsistent work over like past 6 years, and then last 3 years really getting to it, and still taking forever, because I got my real dev job when I was 39, so like a year and a half ago. And it was a difficult journey. And the thing that like I relate to Dorian's channel here is because I heard some of his stories, and he had a more, I would call like the normal person route, where you're going to struggle. It's going to be a lot of hard work. And it's not going to be like you hear people on YouTube say after 3 months of a boot camp, you're making over $100,000. Like my first job, dev job, I'm going to tell you this because I no longer work there, I made $1,375. And the reason I did it is, and that's ridiculous, I'm not saying you guys should do that. I was in a place where I had savings, so I was able to afford to make that little, because to me, the experience was the most important part, and it paid off because I make a lot more now. But what I'm saying is that wherever you are, your path is going to be different, and you just have to be willing to make the necessary sacrifices to make that change. But that, that's me in a nutshell,
For sure. It's funny too, because I always tell people like, don't work for free. Don't work for like low amounts of money. But the truth was, when I was learning how to code and I wanted that first job, I would have done anything for experience. And I even say I volunteered for some job that I found on Craigslist. It wasn't really a nonprofit. It was just people that were looking for people who were willing to work for free, and it gave me a little bit of experience in a real code base, and it helped me pad my resume a little bit when I was learning how to code. And I was there with a will code for food sign, but I got lucky, and my first job actually paid pretty well, and I went into a role making about as much as I was hoping to make, with the same kind of idea in mind that I go into this, I do it for a little while, after 2-3 years of professional experience, my pay will bump up a lot once you have that experience. So that first job is kind of, I tell people don't work for free, but you got to do what you got to do, So.
Yeah, 100%. And like, that's the goal I had. And then reality hit me, like no one was hiring me, because they looked at my resume and it's like, Gracie Jiu-Jitsu, customer service, and they're like, it's kind of hard to take a chance at someone that breaks arms for a living. It's like, you really know how to code, really, And so to me, it was like, I have to kind of do it. And I played a game with myself where it's like, I'm going to start a freelancing thing. I'm going to see if I could make money faster freelancing, then I'm able to get a job. And then I realized freelancing was hard. I'm like, Jesus Christ, it's like, there's no easy path. And so, like the struggle is real for sure. But I think like what I know now, like you definitely have to know what you're doing, but definitely like there's jobs available that I think between like, mid 40s and upper 50s, I think for junior dev, 100% should be able to get. And in some places, even more. Yeah, for sure.
And I think that's very realistic. I think it's also dependent on where you're at and the cost of living in that area, because, if you make 40 or 50 in San Fran, that's nothing.
Oh, forget it. That's
and
like
you'll
homeless.
probably make more there, but it's still not going to be much
enough
relative to cost of living. But I think 40 to 50 and kind of like the average
as
cost of living
junior,
area is very
junior.
Yeah,
dev,
as a
100%.
junior, no experience or very little, like freelancing experience. Because I always say I had freelancing experience because I built websites for my friends and my buddy's sister, and anybody that would let me build them a website, I was freelancing for them. And I did try to do a little bit of freelancing, but what happened with me was I noticed that every job I kept getting was like WordPress jobs, and I had to build up that respect on Upwork to try to get better jobs and people to hire me. And the WordPress just wasn't paying. And then I found myself going in a direction that I didn't want to take myself to like become a WordPress dev and stuff that just wasn't my goal. So I kind of stopped that, and I focused on building stuff for my portfolio and my personal projects at that point.
I did exactly the same thing. And the one thing I didn't do, though, I didn't try Upwork at all because it's race to the bottom, very hard to stay competitive. So I basically just put ads on Facebook, and that was way better than doing anything on Upwork.
Probably a much better approach. I remember the couple jobs I got were all like, I will do this for pennies. I'm trying to gain experience, and I basically like bid as low as I could and literally worked for pretty much for free just so I can try to build that reputation on there. And it wasn't worth it. And I don't.
It's definitely not worth it.
Yeah.
My experience was like exactly like you said. I'm gonna lowball, and then you go, and there's like 100 people that will come in lower than you can, and you're like, what? Yeah, I can't even get one like dollar menu at McDonald's for what are you paying me? So Upwork was out of it. But I did WordPress, and same thing. I decided that it's not the direction I wanted to take. I felt like doing React and more like traditional web development was the way to go. And that's something that helped me break into the field.
Same here. What's up, everybody? Just quick hello. I see everybody saying hi. I see Tech Rally's in here. I see a few people saying hi. All questions will be answered towards the end. If you have questions, feel free to ask them. Engage in the chat, and we'll keep this interview flowing. The first thing that I was going to ask, but I feel that Paul already kind of touched into it a little bit, was what you did before getting into programming. And you said like customer service, you ran a martial arts gym. And it's funny because I remember doing a lot of that, like trying to somehow fit my experience that I had that was completely unrelated to tech into a resume that I was trying to give out to people who were hiring for developer roles. And I always found myself like trying to somehow say, like, I remember I wrote down like at the restaurant, I worked the computer to ring up people's bills. It was stupid, but I was trying to put anything on there that could make it relevant to the jobs that I was applying for. And at the end of the day, for me, it was like I started listing projects, and then I did have a little bit of that freelancing experience and a little bit of experience that I picked up other places, but it was hard when you don't have that background. How do you feel that affected you when you were getting like your first job?
100%. Like for me, it was the hardest thing. And literally, because I did customer service, what I knew is that if somebody likes you and somebody refers you, you have a better chance. So I went that route, and I started making friends who were developers, and I'd be like, hey, you work here, cool, do they have any openings? And like after like a while, this chick was like, hey, I work at a small company, I mentioned that you do React, and the guy said he'll be interested to have you come into an interview. And I came in and I got the job, and I was like, wow, like a referral counts and means something. And a lot of times when you're starting out, no one is going to give you a chance because they don't know you. And that's the unfortunate truth. And if you are not like you worked at a like customer service jobs, like waiter, where like you deal with a lot of rejection and disappointment. So you get kind of like used to it. But normal people, if you don't have that experience and you go trying to get a job, but then no one's giving you a chance, it's like really it hurts, and you're gonna want to quit, and you're gonna think it's not for you. But that's normal part of the process. And when you're starting out, no one owes you anything, and it's like the truth bomb I have to drop, but no one cares. No one cares,
and that's real. That's just how it is.
100% real, and you have to like sell yourself to get the job. And one thing that really helped me is doing like you were saying like WordPress projects for I did air quotes off screen for like friends and family, because you need to start somewhere. So like quickly, like what I started to do is I started just because I used to teach kickboxing. I was like, oh, I'll just make my own website. And then all of a sudden I was like, I made a website in WordPress to promote this business. And, you know, I could show to people because it was live. And that led me to an internship working at a marketing company that led into a WordPress development job that eventually led into me having enough experience, even though some people would say it wasn't real like development, where another company just saw for a year, he did front-end development. They didn't care that it was like, they didn't even know I just managed content on WordPress, basically. You know what I mean? And to them, there's like, hey, he must know something, you know, and then that's how you get in the door. And little by little, you get there.
And then that's the thing, like the selling yourself at an interview. When I talked to Neil about from Kodu community, he mentioned this too, that he had that problem that he was getting interviews, but then it would fail because he didn't have experience. But he was doing so well in the interviews that he finally kind of faked a little bit of experience to where he was able to land a job from the interview, but then he had the experience that he had to fluff up his resume with in order to back him up. And it's kind of weird because I was lucky enough to where I went in and the people that interviewed me, they were willing to take in juniors. They were willing to take in boot camp grads. They were willing to take in self-taught people. Like the lead dev was a self-taught developer, and they were very accepting to that. So when they saw that I didn't have experience, they overlooked the experience, but they started looking into my projects and they looked at my GitHub and they looked at my portfolio and they started asking me questions at the interview. And we kind of got that back and forth going. And they would ask me like, I remember one of the questions they asked me was, why did you camel case your HTML classes and versus hyphenating them? And I was just like, honestly, I don't know. I saw it in a tutorial and I kind of just, I know that you camel case in JavaScript. I don't know why I did it like that. And they were like, well, the standard's more hyphenated, and that, that would be something I would point out in a code review if you did this. And we had like good chemistry, and it was all just kind of selling myself. But in a way, it was also the experience that I had gained that helped me, move forward through the interviewing process and whatnot. But the rejection is real, and you'll get it a lot. And I failed phone interviews, and I remember networking and going to like my first meetup and feeling like having that outsider mentality that nobody was going to be welcoming. And it was actually different, but at the same time, I kind of compare it to when like jujitsu, right? You and I both you train MMA, I train jujitsu. Like, you know how when you get a new guy in
I train jiu-jitsu. Come on, I know.
and
it's not just
they're
MMA.
Super excited, and they want to like train every day, and they're like, oh, they're that white belt that's super eager, but then 2 weeks later you never see them again because it's not cut out for everybody. Programming's a lot like that, and you'll see people come to meetups for their first time. Hey, I want to get into this, and then you'll never see them again. But those people that keep coming around start building relationships, start getting to know you, and that was me. I kept showing up to the meetups, and eventually people knew my name. They knew that I was learning to code. They knew that I wanted to get a job, and I got leads to potential jobs. I got phone calls. I had phone interviews. I had interviews lined up because of my networking. At the end of the day, I didn't get networking technically led me to the recruiter that got me a job, but it wasn't through someone I met at a meetup that got me a job, but it was because of a meetup that I met a recruiter that ended up getting me a job. So it's get out there and try to be nice to people.
Be nice to people, befriend recruiters. I have a friend who's a recruiter, and I talked to her, and she's like, sure, there's a lot of recruiters that might want to take advantage of you, but majority of them, they want to do a good job and find you a place where you are a perfect fit. Because at the end of the day, your referral, if you say they're shitty, recruiter, they're never going to get business. So they have to kind of do some sort of good job and help you out. Also, recruiters know if they place you with your first job that works well for you, down the road when you're looking to switch jobs, you'll probably call the same recruiter and be like, hey, do you have anything available? I'm able to take that. So recruiters are not evil. And if you're just starting out, that's the mistake I made. I didn't work with a recruiter. And I think if I did, I would have gotten my job much sooner, 100%. And with that being said, guys, like if you're learning web development, everybody is eager to get a job, but there is a lot of knowledge you have to know to be able to actually feel comfortable when you're working and to know what you're doing. And surprisingly, it's a lot more than people think, like, if that makes sense. And so if just quickly, finish the start. If you are not building projects for your portfolio where you're actually building experience through trial and error, and you don't have those projects to show, and you don't have those get history to show, and you're not on LinkedIn, it'll be almost impossible to get a job. And then having properly formatted resume. So I had it like a resume that same history, but it was written like poorly and not formatted correctly, got me 0 opportunities. My new resume, same experience, just written following like proper, like, you know, bullet style formatting. You know, you have your skills on the left, whatever. Really nice looking resume. And everybody that's seen my resume, they're like, we want to hire you. And I was like, are you sure? Like, because I don't like, it's like my resume is better than I am at this point, you know, like, but so those are all important things to have before you could be like, what should I do to get a job? Like, you need to do all those things.
Yeah. And I know you've got videos talking about it. I do too. And people fail to realize that there's like so many. I don't think they fail to realize it. There's so many people out there trying to learn how to code and be self-taught developers, and the amount of resumes and applications you get when you put a job posting out for like an entry-level dev job or a low experience dev job, it's just insane. And if your resume doesn't stick out, doesn't look good, and it doesn't mean you have to put flashy colors, but like you said, format it correctly, so when a hiring manager looks at it or a lead developer looks at it, they can skim it in 30 seconds.
3 seconds. Like, 3 seconds. Not even 30 seconds.
Yeah. If you got to stack this high of resumes, they're looking at it like this. And if it's not properly formatted, it's hard to read. They're just going to toss it to the side because there's other people that took the time to format it correctly. And it's not because people don't take the time. It's because lack of knowing how to do those things. So if you're 100%. Looking for that stuff, make sure that you watch videos on like how to format a resume. Make sure that you do your research on how to do all those things, how to properly set up your LinkedIn, how to do all these things, because that stuff, your GitHub account. I remember the green dots. I got addicted to the green dots. I wanted a green dot every single day. And, you know, make sure that those green dots have like quality behind them. Don't just push a change to a README just so you can get your green dot for the day. It speaks a lot about how much you're programming and how actively you're learning and all those things. So it does reflect how eager you are to get a job.
Yeah, and as a beginner, a lot of people, they want to see that eagerness, that you're willing to learn and you're willing to do what it takes to keep growing in the field. Like, you can't come in with this idea that someone owes you something. You got to come in with this idea that you're going to work your butt off to get to where you need to go. And so I just applied to a job, had a really good interview, and there's a lot of stuff that they said was a requirement that I didn't know. And after talking to me and kind of seeing like, well, this guy's eager, he's got good resume, his, you know, GitHub is pretty nice, he knows what I'm talking about, even though he didn't do that particular technology stack. So he's trainable and I'm willing to help him. And one of the most important questions I started to ask because of my bad experience at my first company, because I never asked it, like, what is the onboarding process when you're getting hired? You want to know, because my last job, this is the onboarding process. Hey, you start Monday. I come in Monday, and then they just assign not like a bug, an actual like feature that you need to implement. So for 2 weeks, I sat frozen in front of my computer waiting to get fired because I had no idea what was going to happen. And that was like real. And it's just like, and you know, and they expected me to do back end, even though like when I got hired, I told them I know front end with React. And he's like, you should learn C#. I'm like, okay, I'm going to start learning C# now. Day later, when I start my job, he's like, now that you're proficient with C#, I'm like, what? What the are you talking about? You just told me yesterday. And literally my second day at the meeting in front of all the devs, he told me to implement this security like feature for their whole application that like even their senior engineer was like, yeah, that's going to take me a couple of months to do. And the boss expected me to do it in 2 weeks. And I literally, like, everybody was like kind of laughing inside. And when I went out after the meeting, everybody's like, yeah, when are you going to get that security thing done? And I had to go to my boss, but like, I can't do it. Thinking like, again, I'm going to get
technical. Was the boss?
He's super technical, but he's one of those guys that has like 10 degrees, PhDs. He thinks he's the smartest person in the world. And to him, is like, if you can't figure that out in 5 minutes, you must be stupid. And he lets you know that. Like in the meeting, like, this is mentor. How he's no, terrible. There was no mentors at my last job. That's why I keep like telling people, like, you know, what I've been through is apparently not a typical thing you go through. But every meeting would start with like use your brain, God damn it. What the hell's wrong with you? What are you, stupid? I'm like, no, I'm brand new. It's like, what do you expect? And the craziest thing was, this is web development job, right? But the application was originally built in like 1990s with C++. And he's like, yeah, Paul, it's very easy. If you want to know the logic, just trace the C++ code and just figure it out. Like, if you've never done C++, you don't even know what that means. Like, how do you even start? Like,
it's a tough programming language to.
Yeah, C++ is really hard.
Never seen it,
yeah.
No, for sure. And just to like have that kind of mentality for like a junior dev, it sounds like it was pretty, like, I would say it sounded like a toxic environment to be in.
It was 100%.
My first job was the opposite. Like, the developers were really good, right? Good. Like, everybody always has their own things. Like, you won't get along with certain people for certain reasons, but we all kind of got along. We had a good like little crew there. We had fun at work, but our upper management, the people that were in charge, were just non-technical marketing, people who just don't care anything about code. They're just like, push out the features. It needs to be done on this day. It doesn't matter what it takes. You're going to get it there. And then that's like what we dealt with a lot. So I watched people burn out. I watched senior devs leave. By the time I left, the 9 developers that I started with, there was only like 2 or 3 of us left. Everybody else was gone and found new jobs. And now I think there's only 1 of them left after all of it. That from 2, now it's been longer than that, but from such a short amount of time, out of 9 people, there's only 1 guy left, and now he's the boss. He's the lead guy, and he's a good dude. He actually mentored me a lot, but yeah, I couldn't imagine like having a toxic work environment as a junior, because
it's terrible.
Got to be tough, man. It's got to be tough to get through that, because there's so much stuff when you start a job that you just don't know that. If you're supposed to know it, you don't know that how good you're supposed to be at something that you've never really worked with. And then you see people who are all around you experienced with that technology, and they talk you through things, and it's like in one ear out the other. You just kind of sit there and they walk you through everything, right? You're like, hey, I'm stuck. Can you help me?
Yeah.
Okay, sure. And then they stand next to you, they explain everything, they tell you what to do, and then you're like, they walk away, and the minute they walk away, you're like, oh shit, like I'm still lost, and then you go back to staring at your code and trying to figure it out. And it's hard being a junior dev, and just getting through those first like 6 months of the year were really hard for me.
I saw a comment on the thing. It's been bothering me a little bit because I love trolls. I'm looking at the name Amra Khan, something like that. He goes, MMA doesn't help against guns. I'm like, bro, we live in US. I'm in Texas. How many guns do you think I have, bro? Like, nobody does MMA to win a fight. MMA is a sport. Jiu-jitsu is a sport. You know what I mean? If you're gonna go I used to live in like a rough neighborhood in like Hartford, Connecticut. They have a lot of situations where people pull guns on you. Is not fun. But yeah, it's just funny to me that people have these discussions and comments when we talk about programming. I'm like, bro, seriously. It's like, what are you talking about?
Yeah, no, I
grow up.
I was letting them have their fun. I was letting them have their fun.
That's good. I get sucked in because I love arguing with trolls. I had this one guy came on my channel. I stopped doing that because the channel's about coding, but I basically had 20-minute stand-up routine on his behalf because I can't, it's like, I'm the guy with the microphone. I'm going to say whatever.
Yeah, he can't type as fast as we can talk.
Right, exactly.
So you were self-taught, right? For the lack of better words, like you were like self-taught. You didn't do a boot camp. You didn't do any schooling about code. You didn't go to a technical college or anything like that. You learned on your own.
So I learned on my own with one exception. Like, first of all, I'm a college dropout. I'm going to put it out there. When I was, I went to school for engineering. Before you guys think I'm smart, I didn't learn anything because 2 months later, I dropped out because I knocked up my girlfriend at the time, which was really fun. And so I was like, you know what? I got to take care of my family. I can't go to school and work full time. So I'm just going to be a full-time dude. Like, you know what I mean? And the reason I tell you this story is because we all come from different parts of life. But if you're willing to put in the work, you're going to succeed and you're going to get to where you're going. But you guys are going to have to work hard. But so I kept going back to school and dropping out, and I kept getting like F's and F's. But I did take one course, which was Intro to Programming with C++, that I got an A, I think because I cheated, and that's the experience of my learning in college. I just
See, your boss straight. Knew that you were proficient with C++.
Yes, C++, exactly. With
that one class, and
he's like going to the list, like F, drop out, A plus, F, oh, C++, yeah. So the like, you know, like you could learn this stuff on your own. It's just very easy to get lost and meander and keep trying to jump from one technology to another technology, kind of like what I did. And I spent 3-4 years just kind of running in circles. And it's only until I dedicated just learning JavaScript and React that like things started to make sense. Just pick one language, get competent in it so you can, you know, be able to talk about it and build some projects with it so you could get hired. But yeah, biggest mistake was trying to learn everything, you know, 100%.
Yeah, and it's hard because when you're self-taught, you know, even though the information's out there, when you don't even know what to like look for when you're first getting started and you don't really even know what to Google, you don't know what to look up on YouTube, and you kind of start asking the basic questions like, how do you learn programming? And you start asking these things, then you get bombarded with all the different languages, right? You look up like, what should I learn? It's should I learn Java, PHP, C#? Should I learn JavaScript? What's a framework? Oh, I need to know a framework. And then you get bombarded with all this stuff and you feel like you have to learn it all at once. And then you start kind of like spreading yourself out into like different areas and you don't focus on one thing, like you said. And then you do learn in that time, but it feels lost. In the grand scheme of things, my first 3 months feel like they were lost. I don't feel like even though I am sure there were things that I learned there, I feel that if I knew what I know now, I could better handle like my time management, or better handle like the curriculum that I'm doing, and understand like what I should be learning. But I think that's just part of the process. It's again, back to jiu-jitsu reference. When you're a white belt, you don't know how to do an arm bar, right? But after you do it for 7 years, you don't even think about it. It's like you can drill them in your sleep. You know, I've drilled arm bars thousands of times, right? And now it's second nature. But when you first go in there, every single step to it is complicated, and you're like walking yourself through those steps, and you have to like think of all those things. And programming is very similar, where right now things that were so difficult for me when I first started are pretty trivial, and now the problems that I'm starting to encounter are much more advanced and things I would have never thought I could do. So it's just progress with time. And
100%. And that analogy with like jiu-jitsu, the thing in jiu-jitsu that I like about it is that there's no hiding if you're on the mat. Like I know when I used to do Taekwondo a long time ago, like you could get a black belt at Taekwondo and never be in a sparring match. In jiu-jitsu, you never have that opportunity. In jiu-jitsu, everybody knows where you are, because you either win or lose. There's no pretending. You either have the skill or you don't. And like when you get a black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, forget black belt. When you get a purple belt, brown belt, like once you make it past blue belt, that's an insane accomplishment. And it's like there's no pretending. You can't pretend in jiu-jitsu. If you go to jiu-jitsu to pretend, you're going to get hurt. And it's the same thing with coding. You could talk about it, you could have all the shiny stuff, but at the end of the day, you have to be able to do the work, because when you start working, they'll quickly see where you're at. And if you lied, or if you try to say more than you knew, they're going to know right away. There is no hiding. And that's what people have to understand. There is no easy way unless you know what you're doing. And once I realized that, you know, same thing with like Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, like you could spend a lifetime learning Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and you're not going to learn every move. So you have to narrow down your strategy and just be at one good thing. Like I was really good at takedowns, getting mount, and taking the back. Like I didn't care about anything else. And that's all I did all the time. And same thing with coding. I'm like, instead of doing everything, let me just get really good at React and be the go-to guy in React. And then that way, like I don't have to worry about learning everything. Just stay to my path, learn everything you can, because there's plenty of jobs. Like, you know, definitely make sure that you're learning a tech that's in demand, but you got to do that. And like, you know, I think I was going to say, like, to your point of saying a lot of these people are starting out, they're not sure where to go. And I think having like good role models, or even in your circle, try to find out if you have a friend who's a developer. And if you don't, make a friend with a developer who could give you like the actual like truth of what it is or what you're trying to do, because there's plenty of people on YouTube, and like I'm on YouTube, you're on YouTube. but there's different levels of YouTube. There's people that are YouTubers, even though they might talk about development, and that's perfectly fine. But the point is, they're trying to market to the broader circle, and like they want to have advice for everybody. But you don't need advice for everybody. You need advice for you to know what you need to do to get hired. You know what I mean? And that's very important. People have to have that path. And if you don't know what that path is, you better figure it out.
You got to go find it. And, you know, it's hard right now. It's hard when I tell people like, oh, go network, right? It's because everybody's like, how? Dude, you can't. Well, things are starting to change. There's vaccine. We're starting to get a little bit more back to normal, depending on where you're at. I know Texas, they don't care. I'm in Washington. It's still locked down here.
Yeah,
you know?
Washington is, I don't know.
But it's going back to normal, and you have to get out there. And even if it doesn't feel right, just get out there and network. You'd be surprised how much better it'll make you feel just about where you're at in the process. Even if you're just starting, or if you've been doing it for a few months, you'll get encouragement and you'll get a good idea and feedback. And the feedback is so important when you're first starting out, that it's just.
Yeah, I'm going to tell you like two situations. Both happened to me. First situation, I applied with my resume. Granted, it wasn't my better resume that was formatted properly, to IBM. And 2 weeks goes by and I get the letter. Unfortunately, we didn't feel like you were the right fit, blah, 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 blah. It basically means they didn't even look at my resume. They just like automatically cancel out. And I have a friend who works in IBM, but I didn't feel like calling him. I was like, like normally that's what I would have done, but I was like, let me try it this way. So I call my friend. This is what he says to me. He's like, Paul, why didn't you call me first? If you gave me your resume, I would have hand delivered it to our manager, and you would have at least been guaranteed an interview. That's the power of networking, right? Yeah. And so my last interview I got it this way. Instead of sending my resume to the company myself, I went to my friend who works for their parent company. I'm like, hey, can you introduce me to their team lead? And that's what he did. And then I got a interview from their team lead. My friend Jeff was like, Paul's a good guy. He knows React. He's very well spoken, blah, blah, blah. Like hyped me up. And then I got in the interview. All I did is wear a nice shirt, way nicer than this one. And the guy who read was like, he must know what he's doing, because like he had social proof from somebody else. Yeah. So that's something he didn't have to figure out. He just trusted my friend. And when I showed up, like the interview was much easier because he didn't have to try to prove me wrong. Like when you go to an interview, like sometimes people just want to prove you wrong that you're not ready for the role. And so networking, nobody likes to do it. But if you learn to be good at it, you're going to get way more opportunities, 100%. And funny story about like being well-dressed. So I went to my interview. I had like a nice shirt. I had a tie. I had my jacket on. And I did my interview. I walk out and I'm just waiting because I want to hear like what my boss is going to tell me afterwards. But there's another guy who came in for an interview. And this younger kid, he does the interview. And then he comes out and he comes up to me, sticks out his hand, and he's like, hey, my name is blah, 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 blah.
He thinks you're a manager.
Right. He thought I was a manager, and he wanted to and so this is the thing of going prepared and try to be the best you could be. Like maybe you don't have to dress up, but dress up. Maybe you don't have to spend the extra few minutes the night before learning about the company and actually knowing the tech that they use so you could actually talk to them about it. Spend the extra few minutes. Don't be like a lazy bum going in there not prepared. Like seriously.
So sorry. It's so funny. No, but it's so funny because it reminds me of my first interview when I spoke to the recruiter and she was setting everything up for me to, go in and talk to somebody. I found out what stack that they use, and they were using Kotlin. Kotlin's, even right now, Kotlin's not that popular, but it's way more popular than it was 4 years ago.
Right. Yeah.
And the first thing I did was I went on Team Treehouse. I think they had a Kotlin course or some YouTube video, something. I followed along on a tutorial and I built the project that the tutorial had, and I built it like over that week until I was leading up to my interview. And then when I was interviewing, I mentioned it. I was like, hey, I didn't know this language. I just kind of wanted to play around with it a little bit. I did this tutorial that had me build this app. And I talked about that stuff. And they were so impressed that I went and took the time to do a tutorial to learn about one of the languages that was specific to their stack and that was kind of obscure and not too many people were working with it at the time. And I showed that interest that was like one of the things that made me stick out. And just, it's funny how showing how eager you are, it's the actions that speak louder than that. It's the time that you put in towards your projects. It's all that work that you put in towards learning that will shine through in an interview when you get asked a question that you know because of all the time you've spent learning, or when you show stuff that you've built because of all the time you've spent, trying to hone your craft. So
you got to have pride in your work. So if you're just trying to do the bare minimum, like do average, just so you could get a paycheck, people are going to see right through that, and they're not going to give you opportunities. So if you have pride in your work, you're eager to learn, that's definitely going to give more confidence to recruiters. But if you do the bare minimum, like everybody else does bare minimum. Like my daughter, I remember one day she comes up to me and she's like, "Daddy, I cleaned my room." And I was like, everybody cleans their room. Like, what? So what? Like, what else did you do? Like, clean your room? I cleaned the toilet. But it's like, right, it's the bare minimum. Like, don't show up to me with bare minimum and expect me to be like, "Oh, right, you did a great job." Speaking of,
I do that with my wife all the time. I'm like, "Hey, babe, I swept the floor." She's like, "So?" What? I don't get any congratulations.
Right. Man, I love women, like they only remember the things that they know they could use like many, many years afterwards when they're arguing with you. That's all they remember. I love them. God bless their souls. I was going to say, by the way, you mentioned Team Treehouse. How was your experience with them, like when you first starting out?
So I used them a little bit at the time when I was using Team Treehouse. It was actually, I went through a meetup, someone that the coordinator actually told me, the person that I met, he told me that, "Hey, go to the library." I lived in Las Vegas at the time. And he was like, "If you have a library card, you can talk to the people at the library and they'll give you a free Team Treehouse account, and like the basic account that's like $20 a month. And they'll give you Linda." And this was before Linda was purchased by LinkedIn. Right. And it was a good learning platform. I never really used Linda, but I really liked Treehouse at the time because it was really like held your hand, but kind of talked about a little bit more of the advanced stuff, and then you built something through the process. But at the end of the day, I was doing too many tutorials, and eventually the only thing that really got me to that next level was breaking away from it and just starting to build stuff on my own. And that's when I really started learning.
Yeah, I think if you're a complete beginner, they're a perfect platform because it reminds me of like Sesame Street for adults. I'm like, oh, okay.
You get little badges. You're like,
yeah, exactly. So it keeps you like excited, but like I have like a special place in my heart. But eventually you have to start building stuff. Eventually you have to start doing more complex stuff for sure.
So since we're on the topic of Team Treehouse and I asked you like how you learned, what are some of the resources that you personally used or that you would recommend now? Because you learned to code a while ago. Some of the resources are different. I know that I go through that, right? Like some of the stuff that I recommend, I'm like, I don't know if I should recommend that. It's been 4 years since I've used it. So things change. What would you recommend for someone right now?
The three resources that I use, and like I have receipts to prove for it, because like sometimes like I know there's a lot of free stuff on YouTube and there's a lot of great stuff on YouTube. The problem is it's like you have to first find it, then you have to watch it. And sometimes you get halfway through a tutorial and you're like, oh, it doesn't work or it's broken. And so sometimes I'm like, you know what, screw the bullshit. I'm just going to pay for like whatever. So I use like a long time ago, I used to use LinkedIn. And also because I like the idea how you could like do a little test and put on your LinkedIn profile. Not that it matters, but I was like, you know what, maybe it'll help. But the 4 places that I use is Udemy, because there's so many high quality tutorials for $12. I'm like, how do they make money? And then it's all by like just selling to bajillion people. Then I like Pluralsight, because Pluralsight, there's no YouTubers on there. It's all developers. And so like it's people that actually work in the field are doing the courses. So I'm like, Pluralsight is awesome. I also use egghead.io, which is another amazing one. And none of these things are cheap, but I'm like, look, I'm going to invest in my education and it all pays. And what I like about Egghead is that they're really good about making like bite-sized but dense videos that help you like learn without wasting too much time, which is like amazing. And then I also like front-end masters, front-end masters. I don't know if you've seen their website.
I think I've heard of them. I've heard
like
of
really good guys. So like I'm studying like which is so funny. Outside of Udemy courses, I'm going to study from other developers. Like it's kind of like I'm a guy on YouTube, and one day I want to have courses, but I'm going to go study from this developer guy. Maybe like, what I mean? It's just because like, I mean, that's just me, but those are the resources I use like to this day. Like I spend like a lot of time on like all those platforms.
I like Egg.io a lot. They got some good free stuff too on there as well.
Right, yeah.
I did, like they had the whole Redux thing. I think is it from actually
Abram, the guy who made it?
Yeah. Like he's the creator of it, and his own tutorial is on Egg.io.
Let me tell you about something about Redux and React. So when you're learning React, especially nowadays, it's much easier because now you have Context API. But back when I started React, you needed to know Redux, so it was like very popular. But now people are still teaching React and Redux to beginners, which is a mistake because Redux is so complex, it's going to confuse you. So if you're learning React, learn how to use Context API first, build a couple of projects before learning Redux, because I wasted like a year trying to learn React and Redux at the same time. You can't do it. Mm-hmm. And to tell you the example about that course you're talking about, I remember going to that course and then being like, fuck, I quit. Like, this makes no sense. And like, I don't even know what the hell this guy's talking about. I just went over that course like today because I wanted to review some things about like basics of Redux. I needed to like persist, like state to like local storage. So I was like, I watched the course. I was like, how did I not understand this stuff like 2 years ago? This is so
weren't ready. Yeah.
Right. Exactly. And that's the thing. So be careful. Don't jump into Redux too early, guys. Use Context API. My friend tells me, if you don't know what problem Redux solves, then don't use it.
And it's so funny that you mentioned that because it's very true. Back then, it was always like you learn React, you learn Redux. But even it's Dan Abramoff or Dave? It's Dan Abramoff.
Yeah, he
has an article, a blog post that he wrote that's actually titled "You Might Not Need Redux," and it's like him trying to explain like you don't always need it, and he kind of explains like when you need it. But even that's probably not even relevant anymore because that was 3+ years ago. And like you said, now you got Context API. I don't work in React anymore. I worked with it briefly early in my career, and I learned it when I was learning how to code, but then I ended up getting an Angular job. So now I work in Angular. My thing is RxJS. That's my new monster that I'm fighting all the time because it kicks my ass, and then it makes me feel stupid. And I have my senior mentor developer tries to explain it to me, and I feel like I'm a junior developer again. It's like
it's normal.
4 years later, I still don't understand stuff.
It never ends. I know some people in the comments are wondering if you're going to answer questions, and Dorian did say we are going to get to questions closer to the end, so just keep posting them. We will do proper question and answer rather than taking away from questions that Dorian has.
Yeah, and I'm going to get through some more of those questions real quick though. I've got Paul's channel in the description. Make sure that you check him out. Make sure that you sub and watch some of his videos. He's got a lot of good stuff on there, and check out some of his stuff. Let's see. So, all right. So I guess we kind of touched on this a bit, and you mentioned it earlier because you kind of learned to code over such a long period of time, but you didn't start taking it seriously until, what'd you say, like 2019 or 18?
Right. 2018, 2019, I really ramped it up.
How long before all right, I'm taking it serious to I got a job? Like, what was that?
I'd say for me, it was 2-3 years. It just happened to be the case. Now, I want to give you one caveat. The job that I had before, you have to understand, I was an owner of a business. So there was no monetary incentive for me to switch careers. I was doing pretty good. If you're a business owner and you're successful, actually people told me, why did you switch? That's so stupid. The reason I switched was because my father lives in Russia. I have family in Thailand. I have people all over the place, and being tied down to a brick and mortar business was not something I wanted to do in my life. So I was like, man, I got to figure out how to exit this, because I have to be able to be more mobile. And that's before even COVID hit. And then when COVID hit, I was like, I'm definitely not going back to jiu-jitsu as a business now, because bunch of my friends who had schools went out of business, and that's terrible.
Yeah,
and
it's awful. I saw that happen too. Yeah.
And forget that type of business. You're a developer, I'm a developer. We just went work remotely. But I knew people who worked in restaurants, coffee shops, other places. They had to stop working. And for me, it's like, how can you not do something that allows you to work remotely and has potential within 3 to 5 years to get to a 6-figure salary? And I don't know anything else where you don't need a college education. Like, it's hard, but you don't need it to get to that point. And like right now, like I'm doing like a contract gig, like, you know, I'm making $40 an hour as like a contract role. And that's like, you know, that's a pretty decent amount. And you could,
No,
and that,
good.
and what I'm going to tell you, like, listen, but I'm going to, a contract role is a little bit different because there's no like benefits, so you don't get.
You got to pay your own taxes and all that, or are they paying your taxes?
Yeah, no, you have to pay your own taxes. So there's like that, but that was the low. So that was like my starting salary, and they're like, in 3 months we'll talk to you, and maybe we'll bump you up to 60. I'm like, like I've never heard people talk these numbers to me, so I was just like, okay, all right. You know, it's like, so, and that's insane. Like someone that went from, you know, doing sports and jiu-jitsu all his life and just biting my lip and putting in the time and developing the skill. And now like I have a future that allows me to work remotely, gives me flexibility where I want to live. And I'm able to make a decent amount of money where, you know, like I could at least support myself and my family, you know what I mean? And so that's like very important to like kind of, you know, understand that it's like, but it's not easy. You got to be willing to study all the time. I study all the time now.
That's the truth. And you don't really stop. And now here's the thing. I don't take the work home with me anymore. Now I've been doing it for 4 years. I feel like I did that part early on. Like I you know, my first couple years, there was my first year specifically, the first 6 months, man, I was working so much extra at home and trying to learn everything. And now I don't do that as much, but while I'm at work, I'm constantly learning. Now I'm dealing with a new API from Amazon Connect Streams that sets up like a voice call that we're using for our application. I'm reading through their documentation and I'm getting stuck on stuff and I'm having to bug people for help. And like, I'm still learning. And this was something I was working on today, and it's still, it's every day. It doesn't stop, and it wears on you sometimes. But if you can't make it through the 6 months, the year, the 2 years, however long it takes you to learn, like this is going to be the rest of your career doing this stuff. And that's why people burn out and they don't like it. But if you enjoy it, then it's not that bad.
So I was going to say, I'm like a bad example, like, because I have an addictive personality, but I was going to say, if you could do what you did to like not take it home, it's amazing. I think everybody should strive to do that. For me, that's not how my mind operates. And I kind of like, I'm like, okay, that's how I am as a person, because if I don't do coding, it's going to be something else with me.
Well, that's kind of same here. It's either jujitsu, COVID hit, and I went full time into YouTube as my side hobby or whatever. And I go all in on everything. And I need that personality.
Yeah, and I have to like pick my poison, because if I don't do coding, I'm going to do something else. If I don't do something else, I'm going to do something. And if I do something else, I'll be out drinking or something like that. I'm not saying I am, but it's just like, it's so easy to get off guard. So for me, like, I need to have that constant stimulation. So I code all the time, but I also code all the time because I have what do you call it? The imposter syndrome so hard that like I don't feel like I'm ready for anything. So I'm like trying to catch up. I was talking to my friend who's a senior developer. He goes like, Paul, hold on a second. Tell me what you think a junior dev does. I'm like, builds a complete project by himself from scratch. And he's like, no. I'm like, because that's my first company. That's what they taught me. That's like, if you can't build something from scratch yourself, you don't deserve this position. So I'm constantly struggling with that. And like this new role that I got that is paying more, and they're not pressuring me so much, and they're happy with all the work I'm doing. So I'm like, hey, maybe my friend is right. Maybe there's certain levels of like, depending where you're at, and it's okay if you don't know everything. But
when that hit me was when I was involved in my first like hiring process on the other end, and not interviewing the candidates directly, but seeing the talent and seeing the people that were applying to the jobs that we were hiring for, and then realizing like, oh man, I know way more. Like I know as much as this guy. I've been, at the time I had like a year and a half of professional experience plus the time I spent learning how to code. So I was still I thought I was a junior still, you know, and this was
Right.
almost 2 years of experience.
Yeah,
and I thought I was a junior still. And then I'm seeing these people who are applying for more junior roles, or even people who are applying for like more senior roles. And I'm like, wait a minute, like I can, like this guy's not that good. How is he applying for a role that, you know, pays so much more than what I'm getting paid? And then that's when all that started. I'm like, wait a minute, I think I'm not making enough money here.
Yeah, exactly. But it's a good point you bring up, because we don't see that from a hiring standpoint. So we don't know how many people are coming in who, like, say they're senior or mid-level and they can't answer some of the questions that we know how to do. And so, like, there's a lot of bad candidates that come in. And for us, if you don't get to see that, we think that everybody who comes in is like one of those Google engineers that could do whatever they want. And so to help me deal with my imposter syndrome, my friend who works as a senior engineer who, well, he's an architect now, but he does the hiring process. Every time he has an interview, he'll review that candidate with me and be like, see, Paul, you know more than this guy. And this, I'm like, oh, but I still don't feel like it, you know?
Yeah.
It's tough.
I always felt like the imposter syndrome, and this is totally anecdotal, this is my own thinking, that it's worse for self-taught people. For some reason, I think that. I don't know if it's true. I feel that, like, if I went to college, or even if I maybe had gone to a boot camp, although I know more than any boot camp grad right now. Well, maybe not any boot camp grad, but like with my experience now, I do. At the time when I was learning the code, I probably didn't, but I always felt that maybe I would be respected more, or I would have learned properly. And I'm always trying to make up for that. Like, I'm always, my first job was really a lot like that. And it's really just a matter of, like, I almost burnt out because of it. And I didn't want the rest of my life to be like that. And then I'm lucky enough that the job I have now, we've got a very healthy development culture. We have higher ups that were developers. I work for IT. I don't work for marketing. Everybody that's around me are devs or database architects or architects, and I'm learning a lot, and people get the process. But, you know, the toxic work environment, having management that doesn't understand, and then being a junior dev trying to prove yourself, that's a recipe for burnout. And I got there. Plus, then finding out that you're not getting paid nearly as much as you should when you see what they're offering new people that they're interviewing that you know more than, you know, just because being in the code base.
So you start looking.
And that's what happened. That's what happened. They try to give you a raise. It ends up insulting you, and then you go back and you come with an offer, and then you're like, well, you know what, you had a chance, so I don't even care if you match it now. You know?
And that's and that's like in a lot of companies where you're better off leaving and then coming back, and you're gonna get like higher raise rather than if you just stay there. You have to do it. So one of the best advices I got, it's like, if you work somewhere for a year, especially when you're just starting out, or 6 months to a year, just move. And that's one of the reasons I quit my last job, because I was hitting the 1 year and 6 months mark. I'm like, I can't prolong this anymore. I gotta, and I just left.
Unless you're at one of those rare places that know how to pay developers and don't want you to leave and give you the appropriate raises. Because I was talking to Tech Rally, and that's kind of
100%.
He told me at his startup, they just, he kept getting raises according to his skill. And then, like, they kept him happy, and he stayed around. And I think a lot of companies don't see that, especially when they're not tech related, and they don't know, like, how much of an investment developers actually are for a company, and how much time it takes, and money and resources to get like a dev up to speed and trained in your enviorment.
Right. And that's a good point.
And to then tell that person to leave and then go pay somebody double, who is going to take, 6 months to be productive. And
because
you're better off just paying the guy that deserves the pay. So
And it's like this, the contract I have, it's the same thing. They just told me, like, look, this is what we're starting you at, which I was like, wow, this is amazing. And then we go up this high, which is like pretty high. I was like, also amazed. I'm like, if you know what you're doing and you keep doing it, then you're going to grow with our company. I'm like, oh, perfect. So
nice. That sounds like a pretty good deal. So some of the things that you struggled with when you were learning, and some of the things that you struggled with as a junior developer when you first started working, what are some things that you remember that was like, just really sticks out to you, that if someone right now might be struggling with those things and don't realize that that's common, what's something that you felt? that you struggled with?
It's amazing, like how somebody was like making fun of jiu-jitsu and MMA, because I'm going to say that jiu-jitsu is an amazing example of exactly what the struggle is. When you come to jiu-jitsu as a white belt, you want to learn everything. But the problem is, if you try to learn everything, you're going to be good at nothing. And then once you've been there for a while, you realize that you have to have a smaller path. That was my biggest mistake. Like I said before, and I keep saying that again because it cost me like years of getting a job, is that I jumped around from one tech to another tech, and I never had any real like understanding in any one particular programming language. And then I just decided, you know what, screw it. I'm just going to do JavaScript. I don't care if people make fun of me for doing JavaScript, and that JavaScript is just still the most popular language ever. But the point is, I know programming that I learned through JavaScript, the basic concepts, enough that you could show me any programming book. I'm going to know, like you'll understand. A loop is a loop. You know what I mean? If statement is an if statement. But if you understand the basic program fundamentals, like you know, when I started working at not this company, but my last company that I left, learning C# wasn't that difficult because I already had basics of programming. When I, you know, had to learn PHP for one particular project, I didn't want to do PHP, but it wasn't that much harder to learn because I had a good foundation of programming in JavaScript. I think that's super important. And that's one mistake that really is going to cost you. So if you're not able to build something in one particular language, because you don't have a good grasp of the concepts, then keep learning that one language. Don't move on to anything else. But some people, like, they have that shiny thing syndrome. They got to jump this, and the grass is green on the other side. Then you get there and you're like, it's the same old story. And the hardest thing when I started working as a junior dev at my company was we did not have an onboarding process. There was no pair coding. There was nobody reviewing your code, so you weren't even getting any feedback. So you kind of had to, like, I literally was writing code and I thought it went into the ether, and then like 3 weeks later my boss would be like, who broke the code? I'm like, I don't know, like, maybe it was me, but I don't even know because it's been so long and nobody reviews the code. And it's like there was no real like process of, you know, like anybody was able to merge code, which was like insane.
Ooh, that's dangerous.
That is dangerous.
With that review, like that's.
Yeah, I'm like, how's that impossible? Like, oh, all right. And so that was like the hardest part was like, it's not knowing where you stand with your code because there was no proper mechanism in place to say you did bad job, you did good job. Like one of the things I hate is like, I hate ambiguity because it doesn't help anybody. Like, just tell me either I suck or I don't suck, so I could make the change. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like, and so like that was like the hardest part outside of dealing with like databases and all this other stuff. But you know, if you work at a good company and they have a good way of like giving you feedback that allows you to grow, then you're not going to have any problems.
Yeah. For sure. It's funny because you said the code review thing, and I have a video that I did a while back. It's like one of my earlier videos, and I've seen that it's actually been getting not a lot of views, but people are commenting on it, and I'm like, oh shit, people are actually watching that. And it was like signs of a bad like software development team or bad management, and that's one of the things that I immediately, like, if you don't have code review in process and if you don't have version control for your code, like, they'll run for the hills. Like, if they're not reviewing your code and they're not saving it to Git or SVN or some form of a floppy disk, something where you can have something to recover your code or you know, see what's been changed and have that, then you need to run for the hills. That's usually a sign of a bad team and just a lack of caring for the quality of their work. If you're not reviewing code, if you're not following process that you should be following on a good team. And that's hard to know too when you're first getting started. We had all those things in place at my first job, but we had management that said, we don't care about code review, get it done. You know, and it's like, but this is going to introduce bugs and it's going to introduce technical debt. And they're like, what is that? We don't care. We want this out on this day. Yeah, exactly. You're gonna, and that's what the argument we would always have is like, you guys build these crappy sites and then you force them out, and then in 3 years down the road, you pay some company $250,000 to rebuild the site.
Fix it. Yeah, which is insane.
you could have built it right the first time and it would have been fine, and just keep it updated. But they need to burn budgets. And working for a big company and seeing like how they handle it, I'm pretty sure that if they did it that way, that most companies are that bad, and
Wow.
we're all screwed if that's the case. So let me see. So we covered the struggle stuff. I wanted to work through some of these. I don't want to forget anything. I think I mentioned to you before the interview, I felt bad because with Tech Rally, I had a lot of the stuff I wanted to say in my head, but I didn't actually write it down. And then when we went into some stuff, I forgot to go more into detail on certain things that we should have talked about. So I don't want to miss anything. So I feel like you kind of covered this part. I asked, like, what are things that you would do differently if you were to learn how to code now? And I think one of your big key points is like, don't jump around so much, like focus on one stack or one tech and get good at one thing rather than jumping around between languages and technologies.
So I was thinking about the process, and this is basically what I broke it down. Like, if I were to do it again, if I could go back 3 years and kind of be like, Paul, this is what you should do. What I would do is like break your learning into 3 phases. First, it's like your learning phase. Second, it's your building phase. And third, it's your prep for getting a job. And so what I would say, number 1, pick a stack that's popular in your area because people are getting jobs, and that's what you want to do. Spend time and learn the language, like the main language that is the biggest part of that stack. Number 2, once you feel comfortable, stop doing tutorials because they're not going to help you get a job. Build 2 to 3 projects for your portfolio. Once you have a portfolio with 2, 3 projects, you have your LinkedIn, you have your resume to present to people, then you're in the third phase, which is like getting a job, and that's the prep phase. And if people ask you, when should I do algorithms? Do it then, so it's like fresh in your mind when you go into interviews. Like, study the algorithm, study, like, biggest thing you could do. Like, I do this all the time. I'll go on YouTube and I'll do a playlist of like the most common interview questions, and I'll just listen to them while I'm jogging, so I could have some basic like talking points when I talk at the interview, and then do the prep for the interview when you have your portfolio, because you have something to show. But if you don't have a portfolio, don't waste your time doing algorithms, doing all this other stuff, because no one's going to care, because you're not going to get this interview.
You don't have enough to even get to that point.
Right, exactly. It's like if you can't open the door, well, it's like, I'm going to date this girl and we're going to have a good time. And then like, you're not even talking to girls. Like, it's not going to happen for you.
You're not even trying to talk to them. How are you going to?
Yeah, you're not even like, you're sitting at home playing Xbox. What are you doing? What's going to happen to you? I was like,
oh, that's funny. But no, that's a good point. And it's funny because you said like learn the algorithms when you need to. And you ask almost any developer, right? Unless they are competitive programmers, unless they like doing algorithms for fun, most devs study algorithms in a 6-month period between transitioning from one job to the other.
100%.
Like, that's usually when people are doing algorithms, and then they'll work somewhere for a year, 2 years, 3 years, and they won't touch them again until they want to leave that job.
The next time, 100%.
Oh shit! I got a leak code grind. I luckily I've landed both of my jobs without the need for algorithms. I've attempted to learn them. Cracking the Coding Interview has a great playlist on YouTube that covers all the basic algorithms.
Yeah, I have their book. I look at it and I fall asleep instantly. Like, that's what my
this is the book that I highly recommend. Grokking's algorithm. That I got it on manual focus, so it's not
nice.
Look, Grokking's algorithm. It breaks everything down into little pictures and drawings, because I'm like
that's what I need. I think I'm gonna pick
like
that
an
up.
Elementary school kid. I'm like
I need that, because reading like cracking the interview, it's like, oh my god, what is the time? The videos are way better. Go to the YouTube channel, watch the videos. But the book is like so. It's like, Jesus Christ, what is this? Like, but if you that's the
I ever spent. I bought it used. I don't even know what it cost.
I bought it brand new. That's even worse. And like, I use it like to put my coffee mug on it, or to hold the door open for whatever reasons. But like, the book that I do recommend that people read is Clean Code. It's an older book, but it's like they call him Uncle Bob or Bob Martin. He's like, like, I think it's like everybody should read it just to get the job. Yeah, that book I would say everybody will read. And the craziest thing, I was like talking at an interview, and this is like blew my mind, because we're kind of jiving, kind of doing the thing.
Two other good ones here.
I have the one that I have Think Like a Programmer. That's another good one. But I was at an interview, and then the guy goes, one of the prerequisites before anybody gets hired here is that they read clean code. And it was like, bam, I already read it. Let's talk about it.
That's a good
I was like,
sign.
let's talk about it. You know, I'm like, Uncle Bob, me and him are best friends, you know?
Yeah.
But
that I 100% agree. And yeah, it's funny because you start collecting these books over time. And then, I bought Cracking the Coding Interview, and I bought Grok's Algorithm on my last time looking for a job. When's the last time I looked at those books?
Right.
The last time I was looking for a job. When's the next time I'm going to open those books?
When it's time. There's certain things like you should be able to do, like maybe not, like if you're working with a technology that's using a certain data structure that you need to know, then you have to learn it. But what are the chances of that? In terms for most jobs, like if you understand how to work with array and objects for the most top part, you're going to be okay. You know what I mean? It's like you're fine.
Sorry, I had Discord blowing up in the background, and I just had to close it because I don't know. I hear it in my headset, then I think everybody can hear it, and it was throwing me off and distracting me too much. So I think the only other question I had written down that we didn't really cover was like, what are your feelings towards like boot camp versus self-taught, and how do you feel about those two things?
So I'm going to tell you like this: like if I was like right out of like high school, I would go and do a computer science degree, especially if my parents paid for it. I'm just being honest with you. Not only because like it's a computer science degree, which matters. Like if you have a computer science degree, if somebody tells you it doesn't matter, they don't know what they're talking about. Like it matters. It's very important. But at the same time, there's so much demand that if you're good at what you're doing and you happen not to have a computer science degree, you could get hired. So if you're young, go to college so you can have fun with girls and learn and get a computer science degree. Now, if you're older and you're like switching a career and you're in a position where you could either afford a boot camp or have money saved up to take that commitment because it's full time. If you have a family, it might be really hard. If I would say you could do it, but is it necessary? No. Like I didn't go to a boot camp, but I constantly thought I needed to go. Yeah. And there's a couple of boot camps that I would go if I didn't have a job right now. There's 2-3 boot camps that I'm like, they're legit. I trust the process. I know a bunch of people that went there and graduated and got jobs. So I'm like, it could help. But at the end of the day, there's so many bad boot camps. And if you don't do your due diligence, you're going to they're expensive. They're $15,000. Like for me, like I, used to have a lot of debt just like 5 years ago. Like when I talk about a lot of debt, I'm talking about a lot of debt, not counting a house, like a lot of debt, like almost 6 figures, which is fucking insane. Yeah, and I paid it off. And that's not like the college loan was like 10,000 of that. That was like and I was like, oh my God. I'm like, and when you have debt in your life, you just never are happy. You always feel like you're just one paycheck away from getting your life destroyed. So I made a really big commitment to myself, being like, get out of debt, stop buying bullshit things, and make your life a little bit simpler. And once I did that, when like I was debt free, and I was like, what do I do? Do I go and invest $15,000 to $20,000 at a boot camp that doesn't guarantee that it's something that I can't do? So like I was like, why don't I keep that $15,000 and try it on my own, and do that? But I understand that some people they need direction, and in that case, going to a boot camp, like I have like a friend, his wife went to this QA boot camp, got a job. Now he's going to that boot camp and he's probably going to get a job. But they did their research. That boot camp is very specific what they do. And one of the things they do, they work with local companies in San Francisco that the people are guaranteed at least their first internship. And so like they're really set up there. And it's also not $15,000. It's $5,000. So it's like cheaper boot camp that gets more done. And so you just have to do your research. You have to do your research. But here's the thing, like there's no guarantee on anything you do. There's no guarantee that college is going to help. There's no guarantee that boot camp is going to help. There's no guarantee that self-taught is going to help. If you have the commitment, that the mindset that you're going to do whatever it takes, it doesn't matter if you go to college. It doesn't matter if you go to boot camp. It doesn't matter if you're self-taught. Like I would have became a developer regardless what path I took, because no is not an answer for me. Yeah. I would either die broke or become a developer. And that's how I think. Maybe some people don't think like that.
So funny. I had those same talks in my own head. The same thing
You have to, because otherwise, if you don't, then you're going to be like that. Then there's no real like reason for you to succeed. There's no fire underneath your feet. So like you're striving for average, which is such a low bar that no one's going to hire you, but you're not putting enough effort to go above to be a standout candidate, and you're just wasting your time and you're wasting your life. And I could say that strongly because my upbringing, like honestly, like the stuff that I've been through, like I probably should be in jail, because I got in trouble. I did all the stupid stuff. I like not proud of it, like whatever. Like I did stupid stuff, and the mistakes I made. This is like what I'm going to tell all of you guys right now. And I'm like, maybe like people watching this are our age, but maybe some younger people. The mistakes I made when I was 18, 19, 20, to this day, I still didn't pay for them. You know what I mean? It's just, you got to understand that there's no easy way. You just have to decide to be a responsible individual that's willing to put in the work. And until you learn that you're responsible for your own stuff, like you're not going to get anywhere. And like anytime something bad happens in my life, I know the person who made it happen. It was me. It's not my mother-in-law. It's not my daughter. It's not my teachers in school. It was me. I was the fuck up. I was responsible for it. Take ownership of that and then put in the work that you need to do. And I'm sure like a lot of the viewers here are responsible, but I don't want to sugarcoat this idea that you will never get anywhere by being average in whatever you do. It's not going to happen for you. And the reason, like, look, like I'm able to talk about you like coding and you're able to talk about like, because we're genuinely excited about it and we're willing to do what it takes. You know what I mean? And that's what it takes. It's like, what does it take to become a developer? Doing whatever it takes.
Dude, I used to
what else do you fucking need?
The stupidest stuff, right? Like, and I still do it now, but I remember, and I'm bringing this up because this is how I stayed on track. I remember listening to motivational like speakers on YouTube, right? Like if 100%. I had a day that I didn't feel good, and I was just like, do you remember that jujitsu video that came out like 4 years ago? And it was like this training video, and it's like, welcome to the grind. And they use that voice over. Yeah, a lot of stuff, and it's like you're training. I remember I would go to the gym and I'd play that video on the way there, like the speech behind that. And then when I was learning how to code, that speech itself would hype me up so much that there would be mornings when I was just like, I don't want to do this shit today. I don't. And I was just like opening the laptop and just feeling like, if I got to like learn anything else, I don't want to do it. And then I'll go turn on one of those motivational videos, or I'll watch like a YouTuber who's a programmer, and I'm like, I'm going to do it. I would just be like, if he could do it, there's no reason why I can't do it. And I had that talk. I remember because you said the boot camp, right? Like I thought about going to boot camp. I thought about going to a community college. I thought about, they had a associates of applied science that, focus on programming at the Community College of Southern Nevada. It was like an 18-month program. I thought about doing it, but I had a mortgage. I had a job that paid the bills, that I couldn't commit going back to school. I couldn't commit going to a full-time boot camp, 8 hours a day, and then work a graveyard shift where literally I would be getting off of work and walking into the boot camp every night. And I was just like, I can't do that. So self-taught was almost like the only way for me to do it. But 6 months into my learning, I remember having that talk with my wife, and I'm like, I don't know if I should go to school. I don't know if I should do a boot camp. I had already started networking with people. I actually went to a couple meetups that were held at the boot camp. And I just said to her, I was like, you know what? I'm just going to keep doing this until somebody is going to have to hire me. Somebody's going to see what I've built, and they're going to be like, I can't not hire this guy, and that's what happened.
And if this is the essence that your like viewers capture, they're going to succeed too. Like this is what I started to think, like, why am I questioning that if I should go to boot camp? Why am I questioning that maybe I need a degree? And I realized the reason why I'm questioning is because I'm not working hard enough to learn the things that I have to learn, that I feel like I need to reach for an easier path. Maybe going to school is easier. No, just put in the extra work, do the work, and you're going to get hired. Like, I think like because we both do jiu-jitsu, this is what a lot of people don't understand about jiu-jitsu, that jiu-jitsu, it's exercise of failure and frustration for like the rest of your life. And that's what life is about. You're dealing with failure and frustration all the time, and you make the best of it. So for me and you talking about development, like we're talking about it, it's like no brainer for us because that's how we operate. But that's what people have to realize that that are out there is that that's the work that like Ben Awad, I don't know if I'm pronouncing his name right. He's like a genius YouTuber, programmer, youngest kid ever. One of his best videos was like when he was doing like algorithm questions with a girl. I was like, bro, just make out with her already. Obviously, this is why you wanted to make this video. You know what I'm saying? But the guy is basically like super smart. And what like one of the things he said, he's like, like somebody asked him like a question, is programming easy? Here's the smartest guy on YouTube. He's like, it's hard. I'm like, if it's hard for the smartest guy on YouTube, that like, and he's like, you know what I mean? That's like, what are these people talking about? Like, it takes work, it takes effort, and it does take a long time. But like, if you really want it bad enough, put in the work and do it.
That's so funny. And just to feed off of what you're saying is that somebody messaged me today on LinkedIn, and I kind of want to give him a quick shout out, but it's just so funny because he asked like, what's like some tips that you could give me, right? And his name was Nick, and he says, so you used to park cars at a strip club before transitioning into a web developer job.
That's a good job.
Any tips, right? And I'm like, well, it's really hard and it can take a while for you to get hired, but if you keep doing it, it's possible. I was like, I don't even know if that's a tip, but it's the best advice that I could give anyone that's trying 100%. To learn this stuff. Like that's the magic behind it. That's the magic pill. That's the secret. Just keep doing it.
You reminded me of this crazy story. This is like, you can't make this stuff up. So this is how poor I was. Like back in the day, before I even taught martial arts, I was in a low point of my life. I'm working as a construction worker, and I got called to this house to like their basement flooded, so I had to pump the water out and do a bunch of other stuff. And this is how broke I was, that apparently my boss sent me to a house of this hot stripper of like the strip bar place that he used to do contract work, and he had a conversation with her like, look, when Paul is done, take care of him, okay? And so he didn't tell me this, right? So like I show up, I work fucking hard, and I'm just thinking, what am I going to eat today? I don't even have $5 in my pocket. And like, I go upstairs and like, look, I finished like doing your basement. Like, so like, and I'm like, I need money. And then she's like, goes to her bedroom door, like tries to do the sexy stuff. I'm like, no, you don't understand. I need fucking money right now. Like, I don't need that. Like, that's not going to feed me. That's not going to pay my phone bill. You owe me this. And I'm like, I got this argument. And so she paid me, but then she complained to my boss about it. And my boss yelled at me. I'm like, bro, what kind of payment do you think is? I can't go to the bank with like, be like, look, this is what happened. Can I cash this in here? It's like, right, exactly. It's not gonna fly. And so, like, I get it when it's like when people need to change their job to improve, and like, but you need to go beyond the Call of Duty to get stuff done, because like there's so many people that want to be developers, like out of like whatever the number is. I don't know how many of us. Like, not all of them are going to get hired. Well, how you stand out to get hired. And you just need to stand out a little bit more than the guy next to you, but you still have to stand out.
Yeah, and you're also competing against fresh college graduates. You're competing against people that went to boot camps, and it's hard, dude. I don't know where I heard this recently, but I heard that the percentage of people who actually become get hired as a self-taught programmer, developer, software engineer, whatever, is like 3.5% of people who set out to do it. I don't know if those numbers are accurate. I honestly don't even remember where I saw it. So take that with a big grain of salt, but I wouldn't doubt it. It's tough. It's just like becoming a black belt in jiu-jitsu. So when I started, this keeps going to jiu-jitsu because you got two guys that train, and that's just where every conversation goes when you get people who train. So it's crazy because the amount of work that goes into it, like how much effort goes into grinding every day and showing up and getting your ass kicked by girls, getting your ass kicked by teenagers half your size. I remember I rolled with some kid that had been training since he was like 4 years old, and he was a green and black belt, 14 years old or whatever, multiple time champion at every major tournament.
Wow.
And the kid just wrecks me. I trained at some really legit gyms. I was training at that time. I was training at Carlson Gracie, Las Vegas, which was run by Ricardo Cavalcanti. And then I trained with Vinny Magalhaes for like almost a year.
Jesus.
Yeah, big name. And then I lived in Vegas, dude. I was training at Syndicate. There was like Mike Pyle was there. I didn't know everybody on a first name basis, but I trained a lot. And then
with those guys,
belt came from a black belt that was a Carlson Gracie black belt also. But I remember I went in with the mentality of like, I wanted my black belt in 5 years. Like in my mind, I was going to do it. I got my
15 years.
I got my blue belt in 12 months, which for people who don't know jiu-jitsu,
that's it was fast.
13 months. But for people who don't know, the average blue belt is like 2 to 3 years, depending on how often they train. I was there 5+ days a week. When I could train twice a day, I would train twice a day. When I first started there, they had a 9 a.m. class and then a 10:30 class, and I would do 3 hours straight every day. And I got my blue belt in like a really record time. I competed multiple times at white belt, and then it took me like 5 years to get my purple belt, which is the next.
Blue belt. I was there for like 7 years.
Yeah, I had injuries. I had kids. I had responsibilities. I wanted to learn how to code, so I took time off because it just wasn't realistic for me to train and code because like you said, right? Like I'm super addictive personality, but I also have a problem where like I need to focus on one thing, and when I find something I really want to do, like that's it. Like I'm doing that until I get tired of it, and when I did coding, it was more of a necessity because at one point in my life, I was like, man, if I can get to like a purple belt or a brown belt, maybe I'll move somewhere where they don't have jujitsu and I'll open my own gym. Like that's how I was thinking. And I wanted to be a black belt. Yeah. Well, I'm not a black belt yet. It's been like 7.5 years since I started training. Yeah. And at this rate, with knee surgery coming up in like 3 months and how little I've been training, dude, it's going to be another 5 years before that happens. If it happens.
What'd you do to your knee?
I got a torn meniscus, and I also torn I had like a I forget the level 3 or level 1, whichever one's the less level on my MCL when I did Masters World as a blue belt.
Yeah, I had like guy go through my leg, and I tore my meniscus, ACL, MCL, and every other ligament. I couldn't do jiu-jitsu for a year. It was like insane. I had to get surgery
in front of me. It's bad.
People's
knees get blown out right there. But my problem with my meniscus is that I had damage to it, and then it will lock up on me. And I'll get tear because what happens is like it catches, and then you kind of have to like unhinge your knee and get it back the same way. And if you don't,
you need to get surgery.
Hurts, and then you're in pain, and your knee's swelling for like 3 weeks. And I dealt with so many injuries, broken fingers, broken toes, arm bar. My stupid ass goes and rolls with a new black belt that I had just met that day.
And he has to prove himself.
Well, it was the opposite. Dude is super legit, really nice. I had got my purple belt, and I was rolling with him, and he caught me in an arm bar, and I tried to do my hitchhiker escape, and he stopped it, and I was trying to get out of it, doing this. And he's just like, I saw him out of the corner of my eye shake his head like all right, like, well, you're just not gonna let it, like, you're not gonna tap it.
So you just my stupid ass,
dude. My elbow would not go past like right here.
Like this. I was like this for a while too.
I could only move it this far. I could not do that.
I remember I was like doing that hitchhiker, and then also my partner goes like, "Hey, Paul, you want to stop?" And I look at him. I'm like, "Why?" And then my arm is like backwards like this. I'm like, "Yeah, I guess we should stop." I guess it'll be a good time to stop now.
This is probably a good.
I'm gonna be sore tomorrow. I'm gonna be sore.
No, you know what you're supposed to do. You're gonna be like, no. Let me show you how to finish that.
Oh my god, I hate what I remember. I used to like roll with this black belt, and I was a brown belt at the time before I got my black belt. And every time I was close to catch him, he would give me tips. I'm like, I have you in a choke. You're not. And one day I was like, you know what? I don't care about your tips. I choked him completely out. And when he came to, I'm like, don't worry about it. I got it.
Oh man. Or for one last thing is gas taps. People who just there's this one guy, I won't say his
name, my favorite move. Favorite move.
Dude, he would drive me crazy because rolls 100%.
And then 5 minutes, like 10 seconds.
It's a matter of patience. I finally catch him. I'm in top mount, ready to get something. I can't breathe. I gotta stop.
Yeah,
Like,
I used to like people who do that. I purposely would do knee on belly just to be like, "Hey, brother, I'm gonna make you do this earlier." But the one thing I was gonna say about jiu-jitsu, like even though like it's a sport, it's a martial art, but what's cool about it is that like because it's a sport, you could train as hard as you want without seriously getting hurt. But at the same time, there is no hiding. You know what level you're at, and like there's no jiu-jitsu guy that I didn't talk to that is not comfortable with himself being a man. Like they're all like fine. Like if I say like "fuck you," you'll be like whatever.
Yeah.
You know, like because you get it.
I've got nothing to prove. Dude, I've rolled with so to name a few of the UFC fighters I rolled with Uriah Hall. I've rolled with Anthony Pettis. Like I rolled with guys who just destroyed me. I'm not saying that I even put up a fight, but I have had my ass kicked by legit professional fighters, and I've fought back. And I've had guys who are just swole, big guys who've never
no chance.
And they come in.
Chance.
And in 30 seconds, you never see them again because they get exposed and they get their feelings hurt and they can't deal with not being able to beat somebody up, and then they never come back.
when I got my black belt, because I used to live in Norwalk at that time, it wasn't far from New York, so we went to Henzo's, and it was a class taught by Danaher and Gary Tonin, and it was no gi court like class, and I just got my black belt, and then like everybody goes and I go roll with Gary Tonin, and he's like, "What belt you are?" I'm kind of like avoiding the question because I'm like, "Oh, just like you." I was like, I gotta lie to him, tell him I'm a blue belt so he doesn't fucking murder me. Like the guy's like, I saw him like he went really nice with me, but I saw him go with someone like who tried to hurt him, and I was like, that was the biggest mistake you just made.
Different levels.
He's a leg lock guy, but at the time he was going with a wrestler. And he, like, Gary Tonin's like, "Fuck you, I'm not even going to leg lock you. I'm just going to beat you in your own game." So he proceeded to slam the dude like 50 times. Like, I was like, Jesus
that sounds
Christ.
Terrible. That sounds like my first time learning judo. I remember half an hour into my first judo class, the guy that I partner up with, he's like, "Do you know what a break fall is?" And I'm like, "What's that?" Because I keep landing and he just hears me go, every time I hit the mat.
But what's funny, like I used to like work with a lot of police officers, Secret Service guys, and it's funny because they all like did jiu-jitsu, and one of the biggest things was not even like the fact that you're going to use, like obviously they need to use jiu-jitsu, but if you're like life is in danger, it's just going to shoot somebody, but like stuff like gun retention, if someone's trying to wrestle your gun away from you, like if you don't train that, you might be surprised,
and you'd be amazed, like all that shit you see on TikTok.
Yeah, people get their guns taken away.
You're gonna get your.
There's a lot of fake martial arts. Yeah. There's a lot of fake martial arts. There's a lot of fake stuff. Like this is what I was saying to you.
Right? Isn't like that Sistema thing? Like that's huge.
Why, Dorian? We were having such a good conversation. Why you gotta go there? Why you gotta go there, bro? It's like.
But hey, you guys are also into Sambo, which is.
You know what it is? I think Sambo is legit, and that like I've done a bunch of Sambo, but Sistema, I think it's like some dude who was really good at breakdancing. He was like, "I'm going to make a martial art," and that's what he did. It's
so ridiculous that people actually buy into that, and I feel like this is turning like into
stupid. Let's stop. Let's bring it back. Bring it back.
We're back to coding now.
Back to coding.
Let's check out some of the questions. So the chat is so long that I don't think this has happened before. That the one in StreamYard is cut off, so I got to go into the YouTube chat.
And if I find something, I'll call someone out.
Tech Rally says you have a really nice dress shirt. Juan Lopez wants to know if you're from MA, Massachusetts, I'm assuming, but you said Connecticut. And
no, I'm from Connecticut. I used to be like, so there was a period of time I used to work in Boston teaching Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. So I did spend like 2-3 years in Boston, but I'm originally I'm from Russia, then moved to Connecticut. Now I'm in Texas, which is amazing because I hate the winter.
What area of Texas are you in?
Austin? I'm in Leander. I'm close to Austin. I'm in this like suburb, Leander, which is like the most amazing like place ever.
Nice.
It's just so chilled.
Hey, dude, years ago before it blew up, Austin was on our list of places to go. My wife went there for the City Limits concert. It's really big there, and she was all like, "I want to move there." And this is when we were still dating. I'm like, "Go ahead, have fun." Now it's like, we're married, so it'd be a little bit different. But Austin was on the list, but it's blown up so much.
How come you guys moved out of Vegas? Just had too much excitement?
Kids, man.
Oh, yeah.
I basically lived in Vegas from the age of 17 up until I moved out, at 34. Yeah, 34 or so. So I grew up in Miami, but I spent like my adult life in Las Vegas, and I knew like the worst areas of Vegas. I hung out in some of the really bad areas, and then I also worked in like the nightclub scene, and I worked in the after hours scene, and I worked in the
that's
strip
a rough,
club, and
rough.
I know how bad Vegas gets. I see the drugs. I see the
oh my gosh.
Vegas isn't just shiny lights. There's a lot of shitty stuff.
Oh no, yeah.
And I don't want to raise a kid there. And I think the last thing that I was just like, you know what? I think it's time on the east side of Las Vegas where there's a lot of gang banging and it's like Hispanic neighborhoods. I remember it made the news, and it was basically almost like on Fremont Street, which is downtown, where a cop like in broad daylight was in a high-speed chase with this dude in an Expedition who was like a gangbanger, and the dude was shooting at him during this chase in the middle of the day in the afternoon. And I'm seeing streets that I've driven down. I'm seeing red lights that I've been parked at, and the cop ended up having to take the guy out, and it was huge. It made it all over the news, and I was just like, you know what? Vegas is feeling a whole lot like a really big shitty city that I don't want to have kids in. My wife had family up here, and eventually I got enough experience, which that was like the goal. Like the big picture was like, if I make a change and I get out of customer service and I can make money somewhere else, I'll do software development, and then maybe I can transfer. And then it was just a perfect storm. I was leaving one job. I had an offer for another job in Vegas for Allegiant Airlines. And the call came back from an interview that I had a month before for this job that I took. And then I had like 2 offers, and I had to figure out what I was going to do. And I looked at my wife. I was like, are we really going to sell the house and move? And she was like, I'm down if you are. And dude,
nice. I think it's smart. It's
4-bedroom, 3-bathroom house. We sold almost everything we had. We moved a 2,200 square foot house with a 3-car garage in a 12x6 trailer. We got rid of everything. Wow. We moved here with nothing, and we bought new furniture, and we got out of debt. Because just like you, when I was learning how to code, I was in a lot of debt. I wasn't close to 6 figures, but not including house debt, we had probably accumulated close to about $40,000 over cars and credit cards. We were living off of credit cards after my wife had the baby. She didn't go back to work, so we didn't have her income. And then I started making less and less money because shit was slowing down, and we weren't making the same amount of money as we were in tips. And I was just like, I got to find something else to do. And the debt accumulated. But the idea was that I get in all this debt now, 3 to 5 years down the road, I'm making $100,000 a year, and I pay it all off. But what happened was I ended up getting another job that I moved and then sold our house, and the equity that we got from that, we paid off all our debt. So I know
that's awesome.
Being out of debt, dude, it's so liberating.
I used to be in debt for like such a long time just because of mistakes I made. But like, if you guys are in debt, do whatever it takes to get out of it, because you don't know what it's like not having debt until you get there. And it's just so easy. It's so easy because, like, for instance, me moving to Austin, like if I had debt, I would have never left Connecticut. I'd be like, I can't afford to. Like, I'm just like, and then being like debt free and having some money saved, I was like, fuck it, I'll just do it. And if it works out, it works out. If it doesn't, it doesn't. It just gives you that opportunity. And I remember like, being debt free is like, like I got sick and tired of like just working. I was like, fuck it, I'm just going to take a 3 months vacation. Granted, I burned a lot of money, but the fact that I was able to do that, it was like amazing. So I went and trained Muay Thai in like Thailand for 3 months just to clear my head from all this nonsense.
It's another land of Muay Thai. You went to where it all started, huh?
My future wife, she's Thai. Like I met her in Connecticut.
Oh, really? Really? Did you go to that really famous Muay Thai gym that's there? I always see it in pictures. It's like under a tent and it's outside.
Yeah, no, I didn't go to that one. Like I went to like a smaller one. Like I don't want to get abused and be so public.
Well, I figure that's like going to San Diego for jiu-jitsu, right?
Yeah,
you can't.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
And what's awesome, like I remember watching like old school like kung fu movies where just stuff doesn't make sense. I show up early morning and I see this one dude, nobody's there. He's like kind of sitting there eating an apple. And I'm like, I don't speak any Thai, obviously. So I'm like this, you basically like white dude being I'm like, do you guys Muay Thai? And he just looks at me like, what the hell? And then I'm like, wait, die. And then he, like the only word he knows is like run. I'm like, what? Like out of context. Like what's that even mean?
Out of context.
Run.
He's the trainer. He's
Run. I'm like, what the fuck? He's not even the trainer though. He's just some random dude. Like the gym is closed, but everybody started early. And it was like on the side of a mountain, so everybody did like a little lap around the mountain. And then finally, I see like one dude run past another dude, and then I ran. So this is the funniest story because I was kind of a little bit out of shape because I partied too hard. So I show up, and he's like, I run, and then I come back. Now the gym is full. Everybody's going up. The coach is like, you run again. So I go run again. I come back. It's like everybody's already training, and the coach to me is like, "Okay, you do jump rope." I like do fucking jump rope. I'm like, "When can I hit the bag?" And he's like, "Just a little bit more jump rope." After I jump rope, he's like, "Okay, now you could hit the bag." And it's just like I was like the first one in, last one out, and then like, and I was just like every time like this motherfucker's making me jump rope for like 2 hours. But I lost weight and I got into fighting shape, which was nice. But I was like, this is like every freaking movie from the 80s. This is fantastic. You know? Fat white guy comes to like camp and leaves as a professional fighter. Well, no, this is hilarious.
Starring Jean-Claude Van Damme.
Exactly.
I'm trying to find some questions. There, you weren't lying. I wasn't looking at the chat, and there was a lot of MMA talk and all this stuff. I think Kyle could ask what belt I am. I'm a purple belt. I think somebody answered for him. I'm trying to find actual questions here. Currently, somebody just saying something nice. Thank you, Donnie. I appreciate that. Also, make sure you check out Paul's channel. He's got a lot of good stuff on there that's very similar to mine. So somebody here, let's see. I've got a real concern about object-oriented programming. I'm almost 4 months on front end, but I still got the question how to use OOP in front end, where to use it, or advice. So I mean, it just depends. You know, like for instance, a lot of frameworks tend to use object-oriented programming. Angular kind of uses that in their MVC, and with TypeScript, they use a lot of classes, and there's a lot of object-oriented concepts in there. It was something that really confused me a lot. But once you get a couple of the basic like understandings of like inheritance and how classes work, and how you kind of can extend some, like you can have one class and then have it extend into another class, and then but then you get into higher level stuff that's more complicated that I don't understand, like design patterns that come in with like factory, like creating factories and stuff like that I'm still just starting to learn and understand. But don't get too hung up on it.
And if you
don't need it so much early on until you go into a job, there's not a lot of functional programming.
Jobs. I don't do like a lot of like OPP, but because I do React is actually one of those frameworks which really like embraces the functional like pattern.
Yes.
And so like you're And so all you're doing is like functional programming. So I'm like, hey, cool. I don't need to learn all that other code. I'm familiar with object-oriented though, because I did C#, which is object-oriented first.
It's so funny though, because you bring up React being functional programming. I remember being at a meetup where it was like the biggest nerd fight was about to break out because one guy was React is functional programming, and the other guy's like, it's not real functional programming. And then it was just like, oh shit, it's about to go down. I'm watching this would be good. And the big debate about like being actually functional and whatnot. And I think a lot of that stuff will get lost for people who are just starting out. I wouldn't on it.
Don't worry about it. Just learn the thing that helps you build a project for your portfolio.
And if you want something that's more commonly used, object-oriented programming would be the kind of like the paradigm that you're going to see the most often. But functional programming is out there, and like Paul said, React uses functional programming.
More. Yeah, and like honestly, like depending what you do, you're going to learn it. And if you're building stuff with the thing that you're learning, that's the most important part. Then it's going to stick in your mind easier. Like I remember when I started learning C# at my last job, all I used to do was like React and JavaScript. That I didn't like working with classes. Was a little bit new to me. But if you do it every day, you're gonna get familiar with it. Yeah,
you stare at the code long enough, it'll start to make sense.
100%.
And, a lot of people, I forget where I heard this, so I'm regurgitating information that I heard before, but people think that programming is writing code. It's actually a lot more reading code. I read more code than I write most of the time. And that's what people don't understand. And it's really hard to read code when you're first getting started. And
Yeah,
a lot of stuff
but it's a big part of it.
It's a big part of it. And that's why, like, it's really good to get junior developers involved in code reviews, because even though they don't know what's going on, they can still stare at the code, try to make sense of it. And reading it is you're going to be reading a lot more code than you're going to be writing it.
Here's the funny thing. Like, I made a comment once. I said, one of the best things you could do as a junior dev is read other people's code. And somebody kind of said that you shouldn't do that. And I was like, what are you talking about? I spent 80% of my working day looking at other people's code. Yeah. So it makes sense. It's like, you got to know what they're writing before you could do work in it.
Yeah. The best part is when you're reading some code and you're just like, who wrote this shit? And you click on the Git lens or you see the history and you're like, oh, it was me? Oh, it's a year and a half ago? Like, oh, I don't even know.
Dude, that's me like 3 weeks. 3 weeks is like one of the best quotes I heard, which is like so true. It's like when you're writing code, it's only like, it's between you and God. And then 3 weeks later, only God knows.
Yeah.
That's
that's a good one. Which I guess kind of adds to this question that PK had. He said he's 6 months in of coding on Team Treehouse and JavaScript, and it's so difficult that he can't remember everything. Is that okay? I think that's okay, and I think that many people who are self-taught focus too much on remembering everything. And I think that that's one thing that I did a lot early on. And I made a video recently about like, don't take notes, because I did a lot of that. I tried to take notes. I tried to approach it like traditional schooling, but I found that a lot of that time ended up being wasted because things that I was noting, I didn't know what I needed to take notes of. And then a lot of that stuff I thought was just things like, if I write it down, I'll remember it better, but then I don't use it again. It's
Google remembers it for you. So
exactly. So if you're having a hard time remembering things and you're 6 months in, I saw that Chavez kind of said something like a little snarky right after that it's like, oh, six months and you're just breaking into JavaScript. The truth is that like at 4 months is when I really started saying like, I'm going to take JavaScript seriously in my learning. And I probably I can honestly say I still don't feel confident that I understand all the little nuances of asynchronous programming. And I don't understand, for instance, today I was doing the Amazon Connect streams, and I copied their snippet that they use as their example to how to set up the stream, right? Or my boss did, and he handed it over to me and told me like, hey, can you figure this out? Because he doesn't work in Angular. He's like the head guy, and he just kind of threw a prototype in together. I'm sorry, I smashed that. And then he gave it to me, and I couldn't figure out what it was. And I called one of the other senior devs, and he looked at the code, and he's looking at it, and I'm like, man, I'm setting this variable inside of this method, and we start getting into it's a callback. It's not, we need to turn this into an observable, and he's looking at it. And he's looking at it and he's like, wait a minute, you're using like the function keyword instead of using an arrow function. And then he 10x's me in 2 seconds. He's like, if you're using the function key and not the arrow function, this keyword that's nested within that function is going to inherit from the parent function and not from the class.
Because they have to use bind.
Or bypass
which is just I had no idea. Right. So I was going to say, use arrow functions all the time. I mean, I like regular functions for a lot of stuff, but like, arrow functions for sure.
And it was good. One of those things. That code was copied over. I didn't think about changing it. I looked at it and I was like, oh, I should change that to an arrow function. But I was just so
JavaScript's weird.
Getting that variable to save that I didn't know what was going on, and then it ended up being something so simple. And I just sat there and I even told the lead dev, I was like, I can't believe this shit. Like I spent like 2 hours staring at this to the point of like insanity until I finally called somebody who might know better. And he just, oh yeah, it's that one little line right there. So
here's the thing for you, like the this keyword in JavaScript is confusing for everybody. That's why before React used to be class-based. And you really have to pay attention how you utilize this. And then sometimes you have to, and this is before arrow functions, you have to use like bind. And then they kind of came out with arrow functions to solve that problem. And then they're like, screw it. Nobody likes using this. We're just going to use functions for everything. And let's use arrow functions. So now like you don't even use this word that much in like React, like with its new iteration.
We use it all the time in Angular because of TypeScript and it's class-based. So we're always using this.
That's where it got me. And class-based is always going to be there,
So somebody asked about Freemote, which is Aaron Jack's like tutorial or whatnot. I never used it myself. Have you used it?
Listen, I'm going to tell you like this. He's a YouTuber. I don't know what he does, but he's selling courses. And listen, I want to sell courses too. But the thing is, it's like, why do you think you need that course? Like why do you think like like I would ask, like, or do you even really need it? It's like, yeah, I know it's like about development and e-commerce and stuff like that. I'm familiar with the course. Like, are you looking for it because you genuinely want to learn it, or you're looking at it because you tried a bunch of different tutorials, you weren't getting anywhere, and you feel like maybe that's the course that's going to get you there? Because if that's what you think, that course is not going to get you there. That other course is not going to get you there. And that's the mistake I made. Like, I kept doing courses over courses. What I would say, make a little plan with yourself. Be like, okay, I'm going to give another 2 months. Instead of buying this course, I'm just going to go back to the courses that I have, and I'm going to see if I could really understand and build something on my own. And after 2 months, you feel you're not making progress, which you probably will, then you could be like, I need to buy this course. But like, I don't know how much he's charging for it. And like, I'm all about spending money for my education. But if you could buy like a equivalent course on Udemy for $12, just go that route. And Aaron Jack, like, God bless him, like, he should make his money. And when I have a course, I want to make my money too, but I'm just giving you like real honest, like, kind of advice. And to finish this up, the best course that you could take is the one that you complete and build a project from on your own.
And if you don't want to spend any money, just use free program, because it's all project-based learning, and honestly, it's a really good curriculum. My personal opinion about Aaron Jack's stuff is that I don't know what kind of content he would produce towards tutorials, just because the things that I have seen, his YouTube channel doesn't seem to be based off of like tutorial stuff like Traversy Media. I would have no problem buying one of his courses, because
he's a professional instructor.
Exactly.
He's a professional instructor. Yeah.
He spent a lot of time growing that, versus like someone who's like, for instance, if I just released a course tomorrow and said, like, here's a web development course that'll teach you how to get a job, I wouldn't trust me, because I look at my channel, I have no tutorials. Like, why would I release a course and tell you it's the best course ever? You know,
but here's you do like show like a good point, like, because there's a lot of, like, if you come from the world of marketing, the process is basically build a big enough following, find out what courses they're buying, make that course and sell it to them. And that's like a very standard marketing way of doing things. You know what I mean? And so, like, nothing wrong with that, but you have to, like, and that's why I kind of talk about, like, am I going to take a course by Aaron Jack, who even himself says he learned to code in 3 months and got a job at whatever,
Google, or
Uber.
I think he got into a FANG or something.
Google, yeah, good for him. Yeah. But I would just spend less money than his courses, buy a monthly subscription for a month at Pluralsight, and learn from real developers, and just do that. But at the same time, like, if you feel like, you know, like, to me, like, I could learn from an old lady who doesn't know anything, because I'm mentally committed enough to make up the difference. You know what I mean? I'm going to Google whatever it takes. So, like, the course is not what gets you to where you need to go. It's something that, like, starts your path, but you need to fail and, like, through your own discovery and, like, read and build things. But anyway, like, the other, like, before we get back to this question, the guy was saying it's taking him a hard time to understand JavaScript for 6 months. Like, it's kind of hard to tell how much time he's spending or whatever, or if he's just doing tutorials. At one point, you just have to try building something from scratch. And when you don't know something, don't go to the tutorial, go to the web, like Stack Overflow, Google, because here's what you're doing when you're doing a tutorial. Like, I'm a tutorial instructor. I created this course, right? This is the course. And what you're doing when you're doing a tutorial with me, you're literally tracing, like, if you wanted to dry hand, you're not doing anything original. You're just following. Like, if I go, take 2 steps forward, okay, take 2-3 steps back, okay, spin around, okay, good, we'll go to the left, go to the right, you dance, great job, but you didn't do anything on your own. It's good for beginners, but after 2-3 courses, stop, move that stuff away, sit in front of your computer and struggle by building stuff on your own. It sucks. It's hard. You're going to feel like you don't know anything. But that's how you learn. Like, you fail forward through making mistakes and going forward. So that's what I would say. And I started, by the way, doing that really late, which I think like if you do it the right way, you could get a job in a year. But it took me like more than 4 years to get there because I was an idiot. You know what I mean? And so
I remember being so proud of myself just writing my first like couple if-else statements completely on my own. Well, with a little bit of Googling and whatnot, but like not like copying anybody else's like stuff. Like I was like, I'm gonna write some logic, and it was like I don't even know what it was. It was probably something stupid, but it was just like a few if-else statements, and it all worked. And it was like the first time I actually wrote like my own code, and I was so proud of it. And I'm sure if I saw it now, I'd be like, oh, what is that shit? That's terrible. But you know, at the time, I was just like, oh, I wrote code by myself, and it was just such a good feeling.
I'm going to give you a good
handheld.
I'm going to give you a good litmus test to like test out your tutorial knowledge. This is what you do after you complete a tutorial off Udemy. Go randomly, find a bunch of places, and delete code. If you could go back and fix it on your own, which you probably won't be able to do, then you know what you're doing. Because I remember getting halfway through a course and building this huge e-commerce site. One stupid thing breaks, I can't fix it. I go back and rewatch. I literally had to go delete everything and start the course from the beginning. Now, though, you know, I'm at a point where it's like, oh, of course, it's this one little thing. Like, let me fix it right here.
Yeah, and I've had that happen too. And I don't remember the exact tutorial or course or video that I was following, but you get to a point where it's almost like you end up having to copy the source code because you get halfway through, you don't know what you did wrong. You can't figure it out on your own because you don't have the skill to figure out what you did wrong and what you break. And then you end up, like you said, either going back and restarting the tutorial or just getting to a point where you're just like, all right, I'll copy the code and then it works. And then I can follow the rest of the tutorial, but now I'm not really writing anything. I just copied everything and dumped it in here and I still don't know what I'm doing. And that happened quite a bit for me when I first started too. So how hard was it to get your first job? We've heard a lot of like how much time it took you, but like, how hard was that first role when you got that?
It's like I got lucky, and I like Pablo. He's like very nicely dressed, very important. So speaking of which, I just got an interview from a referral. I dressed almost like you, like very nice, had a nice tie, looked like a senior manager. Showed up, and because the night before I did research about the company, I kind of knew. Because my friend told me the tech that they're using, and what helped me in my I got the job that day. To make the short story long, I guess, long story short, whatever. But here's the thing: like when I came in, my boss had a bad interview prior to me, and he literally goes to my face and is like, "Did you even bother looking up our website before you came here?" Because apparently the candidate before me did it, and I was like, yeah, I did. And I just started telling him, you guys are working on this medical EHR software using React, but you're converting on an Angular project, blah, blah, blah. These are some of the issues you're trying to solve. And I think I could help you. And then I said by doing this, and that, because I prepared a little bit. And to him, that was enough that he didn't feel necessary to ask me any more follow-up questions. But if you come unprepared and you don't take over a conversation, let's say like Dorian and I like doing an interview and he just shows up and he's sitting there quietly and he's not saying anything, then I'll be like going in my mind through every lead question that I could come up with to present to Dorian. But if you kind of fill that gap and start asking me questions, not saying that I have to answer all of them, but like I always ask questions just to kind of gauge the conversation and command the interview a little bit, because that way I have something to riff off. Like I'll give you one example. Like before I went to an interview, like I knew, like, and this is like TechRed talks about, like I'm sure you talked about it, like everybody else talks about, when you go to interviews, make sure you have your stories that you could easily recall of what you did, or if someone asks you like a question, kind of make sure that, you know, the week before, the day before, you went over that in your head and you kind of role played. So I remember I went to one interview and they asked me, what is your biggest weakness? And I froze. And then I couldn't answer any questions after that. And then like they sent me home. It is a stupid question. But this interview, they asked me, what is your biggest weakness? I'm like, you know, that's a great question. You know, and then I just go into like this prepared thing. I'm like, my biggest weakness is like, I'm 40 years old. I started to code like 2-3 years ago. And I feel like I'm constantly behind because I'm not starting out as someone who was in their 20s, blah, 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 blah. And then I go, but because of that, I always strive to work hard and make sure that I'm learning more. And then I started mentioning the things I'm building. And I basically took his question that was supposed to be my weakness and transitioned into like a positive. And what was funny to me, like after I was done, he goes like, well, I don't really think that was a weakness the way you described it. I was like, well, I guess that's fine.
That's the point why I described it like that.
Yeah,
you don't
and I'm
actually describe a real weakness.
Yeah, right. And so, but unless, and like I used in the first example where I wasn't prepared for a question like that, it got me stumped and I didn't do well in an interview. So like practicing these things, these talking points, it's like very nice. And you know what I mean? And sure, like you might look stupid talking to yourself in the mirror, but or in your mind or to your friend, you got to do it. You got to do it. Like
I did it too, because I watched YouTube videos that, not tech videos, but videos that were specific about interviewing for jobs. And I remember sitting my wife down and being like, all right, you're going to interview me and like interview me. And I gave her questions.
And they're not comfortable. That's so hard.
It's weird, but that little bit of practice when you haven't had interviews, because what ends up happening is once you get to a certain level of experience and you get interviews more often, then you can kind of practice by going to interviews and to add the question thing, right? And I brought this up, I think, to Tech Rally when we talked on the stream, was that I remember getting the question of like, describe what like the box model on web, like what a box model is, like the border padding margin and everything on the page,
all that good stuff. Well, just remember,
the first time I got asked that question, I failed it. Even though it was information I knew, I didn't know how to answer that specific question, and I got really confused, like the box model, and I went like, oh, the box, everything's a box, right? But I didn't know that they wanted to know like what it consisted of.
Yeah.
The job that I landed, guess what one of their questions was? The box model question.
Right.
Well, what happened was I bombed it on the first time they asked me at a different job for a different interview. And I went home and I was just like, well, I'm not going to look stupid again when somebody asked me about the box model. Yeah. And I practiced it and I watched a YouTube video on it and I read about the box model. So the next time that they asked me, I was like, oh, you want to know about the box model? Let me tell you about the box model.
Exactly. You know? And that's why you got to practice. 100%. Yeah. And that's like every failed interview I have, like I take something away from it. And one of the things I used to do, like, and people like make fun of me, like I'm like, but I want to know, like, if I don't get a good interview, like I'll connect to someone and be like, hey, what was the reason why you decided to go for another candidate instead of me? Like, let me know. Like, I don't want to go home and waste this rejection, like waste this rejection and the opportunity to learn from it. I will blatantly ask people, and they don't know you, but sometimes people will tell you, they're like, blah, blah, blah. And what's cool about that, I remember one time they're like, well, blah, 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 blah. I'm like, by the way, like I built a project using this technology. I just never thought of mentioning it. And sometimes you might have like a second way in. That doesn't happen all the time, but sometimes it might. But like, I was talking to a recruiter and she said, one of the most important like pieces that all developers have to do, even though you're not working with clients directly, you should have some good communication skills. And like, if you know how to talk, and this is like unfair because it's a skill you have to develop, but if you know how to talk about yourself, you could kind of finagle yourself for more opportunities. Or be able to read the person that's interviewing and kind of get hints from what they're saying to kind of know where to take the conversation, sometimes to move them to a direction that's more positive for you than it is for somebody else. You know what I mean?
I'm very bad about talking myself down, and I don't know why I do it. I don't know if it's imposter syndrome. I don't know if it's just lack of confidence in my own skills, but I'll answer questions at interviews that I know the answer to, but I'll answer them like very unsurely. Like even though it's something I know, I'm just like, maybe like, I think this is it, rather than being confident. I remember this came up at an interview that I had when our lead that burned out left and tried to poach most of us to another job. He offered me a interview and I interviewed, but then one of our other developers got the role, but he asked me a question that he knew I could answer, and I did very poorly responding, but everything was right. But it was just a lot of like, and then like it was just like I was never like, no, this is how you do it because I know how to do it. It was always like, but maybe there's another way, and this isn't the right answer. I remember afterwards he told me, he was like, dude, like, what's wrong? Like, you know that, like, why did you like not just say it. You like, I know
So-
you know that. And I was like, I don't know. You know,
It's funny you say that, and it's like being able to show confidence is huge because people just like confidence just draws people in. Like it's like maybe doesn't like so like I had this interview and I was the same way. Everything I answered as a question. I'm like, is it?
yeah,
You know, like it's like, is it though?
Yeah.
And then the other day I was like, fuck it, you know what? So I came in there and I was like, this is blah 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 blah, and it was like completely wrong, right? And then the interviewer literally said, he said, like, you know, you're not entirely correct, but then he like offered me like, but what you're like maybe confusing it with, and he gave me like a way to like try another angle, and I think it's because like I was so confident that like. He's like maybe he knew like the I don't know, but I think like confidence is always going to help you. So practice speaking. This is one of the reasons why I wanted to do YouTube is just to get used to talking to people about anything, because like if you could fill in time and draw a conversation, like if you're in an interview and the interviewer has 100% power to ask you whatever questions they want, you're already like not going to do well. So like little by little, like when I go to an interview, I'm like, what could I do to at least take away 20% of that time and be able to ask my own questions? And then like my last interview, I was like 50-50. And it was weird because I didn't realize it, but I started asking my interviewee questions about their company and like the problems that they were having, and then was talking about like, and then he actually told me like a problem, and then he was like, and you know, I wish that we did things a little bit different, and then now he's like explaining himself to me. I was like, Jesus Christ! I was like, that's not what I wanted to do. But
that's a very important part that people miss, especially when it's your first job. I noticed that the questions that I was asking for my second job were so different than they were from my first job, because at my first job, I did not care. I was anybody that was willing to hire me. Like they could have told me that half of my job would have been cleaning toilets, and I would have been like, the other half is writing code. I'll take it. Because that was my mindset. The second job around, no, I was asking all the important questions. Like you said, what are problems that you guys face? What's your development process like? What's your process like? Do you run Scrum? Do you run Kanban? Do you have any system for tracking tasks? And how do problems get handled when something comes up and things like that? And those are questions that you ask, that you should be asking, and you shouldn't be scared to ask questions when you're for your first job that could affect you. Like in the
what's interesting, it's like you're speaking their language, so they would that make an assumption that you kind of have a base understanding of what you're talking about, because you're talking about all those things that make sense. And so if you're able to talk about things on a high level, like it's good, because like then they're like, all the little stuff we could teach you, we could fill in the gaps, you get the general idea. But I see like Pablo, he had a couple of questions. He says, why are algos used as a way to vet candidates? And I had interviews where that's all they did, and I failed and didn't get the job. And then I had interviews where it's like, build me this thing, which I could do. So I'm not saying that every job does it. And at the same time, like someone said to me, like, aren't you afraid of like someone's doing these Google algo questions? I'm like, yeah, those questions and those jobs are probably designed for those college grads with math degrees. Let them have that job. Yeah. I'm going to just go to something else and do something that I want to do. I don't want to work as a data scientist doing math all day. That's not what I signed up for.
Yeah, it's not what I'm trying to do.
There's plenty. Yeah.
I just want a good paying job that gives me the benefits that I was looking for, as far as like flexibility, remote work, and the opportunity to become an entrepreneur or open my own business further down the road. Like my goal is not to go work at a FANG. I think I'm too old for that. I think that ship has sailed for me. Two, I don't really agree with like the FANG like mentality of like having like a campus where they try to trap you. They try to get you there in the morning, and then they give you sleep pods, and they give you gyms, and they give you gourmet meals all day long, because they don't want you to leave, because if you're there, you're walking around with your laptop all the time, and you're coding and you're working the whole time. So they trick you into being there for 12 hours a day. You
just jinx yourself. You're gonna get next offer from like Google or Facebook.
I don't think I'm cut out for it. I wouldn't be a cultural fit for it. I don't think it's my thing.
You know, both of these options are good, because you need developers at every level, and just the fact that you don't want to work at FANGs. And this is what I thought, like the job that I applied for, like some Fang wannabe is not going to apply for. So I don't have to worry about him or her competing with me because they're going for these crazy jobs, like, and that's fine. There's plenty of like development. Like there's so many different paths that you need an employee to do the job at every facet, and they all pay pretty good. So it's like just pick the path that you feel you're going to be comfortable with, and pursue that path. Like I have a friend, but
oh, sorry, I don't know. I think there's just this idea about working at Fang that I think it, you're it's like bragging rights. It's like a badge of honor. But I think something that a lot of the younger people fail to realize is that at the end of the day, it's just a job. And if you don't think that you're just not going to be another cog in the wheel, if you're just not going to be another name on a commit ID, like that's all it's going to be. The truth is that many companies, even smaller companies, deal with a lot of like similar issues that bigger companies deal with. They need to optimize so they can convert more clients. They need to make their systems better so they can handle more data, or they need to scale. And there's a lot of different things that go on with software development. And just because they put this elitism into the whole Fang thing, and I think that's where this comes from. The algorithms as a way to vet candidates. It's just like, oh, this is how Google does it. Then, Tina and Tony's pizza parlor who needs a web developer is gonna, maybe not them, but they're gonna do algorithms because they don't know how to find developers. They don't know how to properly vet people at scale. So an easy way to do it is like, well, if they can figure out these puzzles, then they know enough to
learn whatever
to be worth our time for calling. And algorithms are just something that you practice, and they're literally formulas that are written a certain way, and you just learn them and study them, and that's it. It's not like you need to be special to know algorithms. It's just something that you have to take the time to study and learn, like anything else. Andrew here has a good one here. He started a boot camp in 2019 at 35. He finally settled on one language, JavaScript, finished his first contract at Microsoft in July. Toxic management, suggestions on how to find a good next development shopper role. What's your suggestions? I'll let you go first. I have some ideas of, what he could do to make sure that doesn't happen again, or try for it to not happen again.
Yeah, I mean, like I had like a bad experience too, and I just started applying. Like for me, like the best like decision I made is finding our recruiters and start working with them to find right like opportunities for me based on my level and understanding. But for me, every job I had, like I landed through like networking. And so it's a very hard question for me to answer, So.
Gotcha. I would say that the best thing that you can do is to make sure that you find a good development role as your next position is ask all the questions that are the things that you don't like about your current job.
Oh, good idea.
Those things, when those interviews come up, when you feel like you're doing well, maybe your first interview or your second interview, when it's time to talk about like why you're a good fit, it's time for you to find out why that company is a good fit for you. And that's when you need to ask, like, what processes are in place? Like, how do they do things differently there than at your last job, and why that it should be appealing to you as a potential employee to them, because you're also interviewing them when they're interviewing you, because it's a two-way street when it comes to getting a job, even though it may not feel that way. And it feels like you're the one being interviewed. And if you say the wrong thing, it might cost you the job. Don't be so scared. Don't be scared to negotiate your salary. Don't be scared to ask questions, because you're probably going to, if you get that job and you're there for 6 months, a year, 2 years or longer, and you don't ask those things up front, you're going to end up in the same position that you're at now and not liking it, because you're going to be caught off guard by something that you could have asked early on. And Andrew goes to say that he's been watching both of us since the beginning, and great content. So thank you, Andrew. And I hope that we answered your question there. I'm trying to see more, like the chat got long, and I feel like I saw
a funny question. Like I'll read it quickly before you jump into this. It says like, if you're not subscribed or haven't hit the like button, what should you do? I don't know. Give yourself a hug, and then
somebody asked that.
Yeah. No, they're being funny. Obviously. I'm like, all right, this is what you do. Give yourself a hug first. I'm going to walk you through it. All right. Take your mouse and highlight it over the no, I'm just kidding. Okay.
The headphone reference, I don't know. I'm wearing Sennheisers, but I don't know if that's what he meant. I don't know if I made a reference to headphones earlier and I forgot now. Let me see. Paul, you need a higher chair. That's what Tech Rally said.
You know what? Like Tech Rally is just jealous that I wore a really nice shirt to your interview and not his, because you know what? It's fine. It's fine. Listen, like I don't want to intimidate people with like my stature. You know what I mean? Like I don't want
to. Oh, that's funny. It's funny because all I could think about is the first time that Elon Musk went on the Joe Rogan podcast and he wore Joe Rogan wore like a pink polo shirt, and you're kind of wearing that like salmon shirt. Yeah. So I feel like I should have dressed up more now.
Listen, I even got nice pants on. You know, like just do the, you know, like show respect. I'm not wearing respect. Pants, so.
Let me see. I'm looking for questions here. There was a lot of chatting. I'm like sweating over here. The lights and my monitor and everything's got me.
Yeah, like, it's pretty hot. Yeah,
dripping sweat over here. It's terrible. You know what? There's not many other questions. There's still a few people right now in the live stream. I'm thinking we're starting to wind down a little bit. It's getting past the 2 hour mark.
It's forever. It's good.
It's late for Paul. If there's nothing else for anyone to ask right now, I think I'm probably just gonna end this now while you know, get out while the getting's good and everybody's entertained. We went off on jiu-jitsu and we went off on a few other things, so I don't want to go off on any other tangents. But if anyone has a question they want to ask now, it's the time. If not, we'll probably wrap it up. And I know there's a delay, so I'll give it a few minutes and we'll just see. It's been great talking to you, Paul. I know this has kind of been in the works for a while.
Yeah. No, I really like when I first saw your channel, I was like, it's funny too, because I saw your channel, then I saw like, I mean, you're growing pretty well, because I saw it when it was smaller. It was pretty awesome. But I was like, man, and that's when I was like, because before that I had my YouTube channel, but I wasn't consistent. And I was like, I'm going to do like this guy's doing it. I'm going to do it. And then you like skyrocket. I'm like, Jesus Christ, this guy.
Dude, I don't know how. Like Tech Rally was asking me about it too. I don't know. I got a little lucky with the I got very lucky with the what the hell, the White Hat Junior video. That was just like, I found something that was like a good topic that didn't have a lot of content on it, and it blew up, and then that kind of set up the next few videos that weren't related to that ended up doing well. And then like I'm coming down from that big peak. Like if I showed my analytics, you would see like I had like this big ass peak in December and in January, and then it's been going down. And now I'm like on this flat line. So it's like, you know, my little line when I first started, big peak like that, then it drops down and like I'm a little bit higher than I was when I started over here, but now it's like flat and I'm like, I don't know what I'm doing. And now I'm like, I'm focusing on the numbers and I'm just getting stressed out about it. So I just
it's a grind. It's a grind.
Yeah, I think like jiu-jitsu grind, learning the code grind. It's something I'm used to, but it still sucks when.
So like I'll tell you this, like the thing that got me interested in your channel, because I like a YouTube person. I watch YouTube videos all the time, and I used to be in marketing and all this other stuff. Like that, when I watch you, like you present a very genuine self. You know what I mean, and very relatable. And so that's why it's kind of like people get attracted to you. Like I watch like somebody else, and I'm like, oh, they're doing their thing. Like if I have to be like they're doing their thing, like I'm doing my thing because I want to sell you something, like. Or being disingenuous, like there's plenty of channels which I watch because I've been on YouTube watching forever, that I know when you said one thing and now you're saying another thing, and then you try to say like you never said this other thing, Christian, and now like whatever, you know what? Like, but the good news is that there's plenty of YouTubers out there that you could follow whoever you want, and the world will be fine. Like, if you like what you put down, and like I find I'm very relatable to you. Like, it's not even jiu-jitsu, but like your coding and our age and everything else, and like the same struggle you had in life, I have. Like, so it jives with me. So I'd much rather listen to you. Like, there's people like if you have smooth skin and like, you know, like shaven and you look like 13, you watch Tech Rally. You know, sorry, like, I don't know if he's still watching. It's probably past his bedtime. I love Tech Rally. I love Tech Rally, but he's like we were kind of coming up, and then he skyrocketed. I'm like, God damn it, you know, whatever. It's fine. But Tech Rally's cool. But like, right, you watch people that relate to your core message most, like, and that's what you follow. And so like my goal is to be a developer like first and not a YouTuber. One day I want to make money off YouTube, but it's not like my main gig. And I'm fine with that. And I want to present myself in a way, like, I don't want everybody to watch me. Like, if people hate my channel, that's good. That means that, like, I know what my message is to my core audience, that, like, it's like, it has a very targeted, like, whatever, like, and some other channels, I'm like, it's like, Jesus Christ.
It's funny that you said that too, because it is true. And the YouTube thing is, it's kind of hard, right? Because I started it as like I wanted to talk and make a channel and maybe make some extra money. And then I was like, I don't know what the hell to talk about. I was originally going to do a jiu-jitsu channel. And I was just like, there's too many good jiu-jitsu people out there for me to do a channel, right? And it's funny because there's a lot of good programming channels out there, but I felt like I could, like, that was just something I felt more comfortable talking about. I'm not a black belt. I was like, I can't do jiu-jitsu. And I was going to start talking about like my money and like my financial investments, but I was like, well, I'm just starting to do that stuff. I don't know. I'm like, what can I talk about? I was like, I learned how to code. Let me make videos on that. And then I went on this, like, I want to grow my channel. I think everybody does that. Everybody that starts YouTube, you look at the numbers every day. You get more views one day than you did the last, and you're excited. And so now I've gotten to a point where I want to see how far I can take it. But I still want to not be fake about it. I still want to be.
Right.
I don't want to start selling shit just because it's paying me, dude. I've got sponsor deals right now lining up. People have been emailing me left and right. I made one video where I was talking about coding boot camps and how coding boot camps are reaching out to me to sponsor my videos, and I'm just like,
so
did they even watch my stuff?
No, they didn't.
They didn't, because they I put them on blast for it, and I called them out. But at the same time, I'm like, well, if I want to grow as a channel and I want to grow as a YouTuber, now I have to be very careful about like the stuff that I do want to recommend, because I never want to lead people who were willing to watch me when I was talking about stuff that was going to help their lives and help them grow, and then make that switch to where I'm like, and this video is brought to you by so and so.
Yeah, right.
At some point you might have to do it, but I want to hold off on that. But I also want to grow as a YouTuber and get to that level. So it's weird when you hit like, could this become a thing? The
hardest thing to do, and I totally see it. Like, I know I make fun of people because, like, I could make fun of whoever I want. It's every country. But the point is, some of these people, it's like, if they're doing a YouTube like business and that's where a majority of their income comes, they have to play for the algorithm. They have to play what's popular, even though it like is useless to developers. Like, like it's like feel good videos. Like, you watch it and you just wasted 10 minutes. Like, good for you. You know what I mean? And that's fine, because that's what you got to do.
That's the problem. It makes it so hard, because that's what people watch. So now I find myself trying to make videos that are more entertaining and less informational, and really that's what's happening, is that, like, I have to add, if I want my videos to be more successful, I need to add 100%, I need to add overlays, I need to make it engaging to keep people watching if I want to grow as a YouTuber. But I feel like a lot of the valuable information gets lost in there, because some of my best videos that have some of the best information have very little views, because nobody's watching it, because it's not entertaining. There's people watching. I shouldn't say nobody's watching it, because I get hung up on.
No, people are watching. So
yes, people watching it, and it's helping people. But at the end of the day, when you're thinking of like trying to be a YouTuber and growing, you don't want to make that video again, because it doesn't help your channel.
I think like you have to find a good balance, because you're going to have like 20% of your true fans that want to watch the video that you talked about, but then there's 80% of people that just want to entertain. So you kind of have to make majority of content that helps the channel grow, but at the same time still make content for the little guys. I think like if you're like somebody, like for instance, this is how I want to grow my YouTube channel, and I don't have the answer to it. It's like this. It's if someone like would take away the channel from me, am I gonna starve, or am I gonna be okay? And so the idea is like, I want to do this YouTube thing as a bonus, but not rely on it as like a business. I want to have a business outside of YouTube that just happens to use YouTube to talk about it. And if YouTube disappears, I'm perfectly fine. And that's what like kind of like what I want to do. So I was talking to Tech Rally about it. It's like my ideal situation would be, it's have a YouTube channel that's making some money, so then I could pick and choose what kind of contract roles I take as a developer and only work on projects that I like. I know Hologram Nunchucks. I love his name. He comes to my channel too. But do you guys think junior dev salaries will start going down because there's saturation of devs in the market? I personally don't think there's a saturation of devs. I think it's something you hear when you're not qualified for the position, and then people start throwing out that excuse because, like, I talk to recruiters. And based on just like my professional experience, they're like, oh, we got a job for you. Do you want to, like, I'll get your job right now. And then I've been having interviews. Like, it's just like you just have to, as a junior, you have to get to this point where you just have enough experience where people like gonna be like, okay, let's hire him. Yeah. But if you're not getting there, it's very easy to start saying like, is the job market saturated because no one's hiring me? It's saturated if you don't meet the qualification yet. And it's not a bad thing. Like, I didn't meet it for a while. So I just kept going and learning and studying. And now it's like, now I have more opportunities.
I think you hit the nail on the head with that it's kind of a cop out, right? And I don't mean to say that to like put anybody down, but it kind of is. Like, when you always hear, and then now the new thing is like, no code is going to replace developers.
No,
look, if Wix and all of these Squarespace companies were going to replace web developers, they would have by now. Guess who has to build those things? Web developers. All that stuff it might be a WYSIWYG drag and drop editor for some, grandma who wants to build a web page about her cats, but to build Wix, you need to be a software developer, and not just one. It's a giant team of
developers. I'll give you one example here. So the company I worked for, we have this huge EHR like software that we were building for hospitals to use to manage their employees, their patients, prescriptions, everything else. Huge application. We needed so many developers to work on. Our personal business website, it was made with WordPress. So, like, the point what I'm trying to say here is that there's different niches for whatever the solution is. And for small businesses or these basic company-faced websites, Wix will be fine. I know people that make good money setting up Wix for people. That's fine. Yeah. But then there's other projects where Wix is a terrible solution where you need like a team of engineers to be able to solve. So those two different markets that they work on. Yeah. And that's why I tell people, if someone says, I want to learn PHP and WordPress, because I want to build WordPress team and work as an entrepreneur, that's a different market and the problem that it solves than someone, let's say, like I'll just randomly use like ASP.NET and C# developer. It's totally different business needs. You know what I mean? And so you're not going to build this like that. Like, basically the application that we build at work, you can't build with WordPress.
Yeah. It's and I since I started learning how to code, I've heard those same things. It's saturated with junior devs. It's hard to get a job. AI is going to write its own code, and the need for developers isn't going to be needed anymore. That's my email blows up. I probably get 5 to 10 recruiter emails on a regular day, at least 5 emails of like immediate role, role. Leave me alone, junk mail, but that's just, it's hard for juniors. And like, I think Jose hit the nail on the head. Maybe it's a saturation of bad developers. Not saying that junior developers
listen, Jose. You're reminding me when I was 15 years old and trying to date girls. That's the excuse I got. It's too saturated for you, Paul. There's just not enough. I'm like, God damn it. What is going on here?
So Andrew's asking me a question. How do you not take your work home with you? I have literally started dreaming in code and seems super hard to shut down the brain after work. So
I was going to say discipline.
This is going to be a strip club. I'm going to take this to a strip club story.
Let's do it. After hours.
I worked at probably the busiest strip club in the United States, maybe even the world, the Spearmint Rhino, Las Vegas. I worked there for 5 years. It is a crazy busy place. And my job for a long time there was parking the dancers' cars. Now, some nights we would park over 300 cars. Jesus. For night shift, for the 9 o'clock shift for girls.
Wow, that's a lot of girls.
Just to give you an idea how many girls work there at 9 o'clock. That's not the girls that came in at 2 a.m. That's not the girls that came in at 10 a.m. Those are the girls that came in at 9 o'clock, which was the biggest shift. So on a Friday night, we would park about 300 cars. I remember when I started there and my buddy told me, the guy that got me in the program, and he's like, you haven't been working here long enough until you have nightmares about not being able to find car keys or like not being able to like park a car.
Damn.
And that ended up happening to me. And I remember when I started having nightmares about code because of my job. And that's why when he said he's literally dreaming about code, sometimes you'll get like a dream that you'll figure out a solution and it's like a happy code dream. But when you start having stressful dreams about like your job, it's time for you to just don't do it. Refuse to do it. If they give you a task that is unachievable to complete within the allotted time. Yeah. Like if you're on a scrum and it's a, you know, it's a 3-point task, but it really should be a 6-point task, but they're telling you it has to be 3, you know, tell them why it can't be done, but don't go home and do that work because you're always going to do that. You do it now. Right. You're going to do it the next job. You're going to do it the next job. And at some point you're either going to burn out or you're going to say, fuck it, I'm done. And if you feel that way now, just throw your hands in the air and drop your papers and say, I'm out. And that's it.
And here's one thing that all of you guys have to understand. It's just a job, like Dorian says. Like, then your job is not going to show up at your kid's recital. It's not going to tuck your kids at night. It's not going to take care of your grandparents. Like, it's not going to help you live your life. So, like, you can't give away part of your life that you'll never get back with, like, your family or your loved ones, because time is something you never give back. So setting these, boundaries is very important. And like for me right now, like the reason I'm able to do all this stuff is because I'm in a transitional point in my life. I don't have that much responsibility. My daughter, she's 21. She's living in Japan. My fiance is traveling abroad. I literally live right now in a small apartment with my 2 cats. I have zero responsibility. So I could do all this stuff because I have too much time. But like when my fiance gets back, if I told her I'm working like 24/7, she's going to leave me. She's going to be like, what the hell? When's the me time? When is like whatever? You know what I'm saying?
That happened with my wife a lot too. When I got that first job and she was just like, hey, because bro, when I was learning how to code, like it was, I wake up,
consumes you,
open my laptop, put it on my lap, and I would fall asleep with my laptop on my lap. Some days, like the whole day. And my wife gave me that time because the idea was like, okay, you'll do this for however long it takes to get a job. And then when you get there, then I can have you back.
It's like it has that normal. Right. Yeah.
But it wasn't the case. I went in deeper and deeper and took work home with me and wanted to learn the technology we were using and felt like I had to put in extra time and felt like I had to figure out the bug that took me too long to work on. And then eventually it was just like, hey, dude, you're not here. You've got a job. Like, why are you still working like this? And I had to sit back and say, like, why? And then it got to the point where like I hated the job. They weren't paying us enough. Our management were a bunch of idiots. And I don't want to get too far into that, but it turned into a toxic work environment, which made it a lot easier for me to like mentally check out and say like, if it doesn't get done, it doesn't get done. Fire me. I'll go on unemployment and look for a job. Right. You know, like
exactly.
Switch at some point. And
and you have to understand that. And so like for me, like, and when you said you were able to find that balance, I think that's one of the most important things, and the boundaries you have to set from the very beginning. Very important. I just want to shout somebody out. Kit Kat, good morning. She's actually in my Slack channel, and so we've been working on like community projects, building stuff. And so because basically I realized that a lot of people do tutorials. And so like I decided, instead of teaching people how to code, I'm just going to be like on them by being them. Here's the project you have to make. Let's build this project, because at the end of the day, you need to have something that you could show for it. And so my point, I told like Kit Kat is a great example of this, because if someone asks me a question and I see what they have done, if they put no effort, I'm not even going to respond to them. Like Kit Kat asked me a question one day, like a while back, and she did so much work. I'm like, she's doing it. She's building her portfolio. She's really getting after it. So I was like, I'm going to help her out. I'm going to answer some questions. And that's like the thing I want to say, like, and this comes back to your example, is that our time is valuable. So if someone's not putting like real effort, like no one's going to help you. Like, you know what I mean? And at the same time, it's like, like it's crazy. And I was about to say, I know. I was going to say, like being older, like especially in like your mid 30s, late 30s, early 40s, wherever it is, you're probably at a point in your life where you do have kids and a family, and these decisions that you make, they're going to have huge repercussion on your relationship. And you have to talk to your partner, to your family, make sure that what you're doing as a team. And you have to be clear, and you have to constantly check in with your partner, because it will give a lot of weight for you. And I'll give you like one example. Like, I used to be married before and I got divorced. And one of the reasons was I was a workaholic. When I had my gym, I would go there at 10 a.m. and I would leave at midnight every day. For me, like, it was fun. I would hang out with buddies, with my friends. And for her, it's like, I never see you. It's like, you're telling me it's going to be easier, but all you do is you work. And then and so like, I wasn't taking like stuff into account, and it didn't end well. And so best advice you could do, work as a team, do things together.
100%, 100%. My wife is quick to put me in check, though. She has no worry telling me like, "Hey,
you have a good partner.
Where are you at? Like, what's going on? Like, why are you spending so much time on YouTube?" I'm like, all right, I'll stop. But we have a schedule, and honestly, the schedule that we keep, it's almost necessary for me, because I have that personality where I get lost in the things. And video games. I always focused it on bad things. I always focused it on video games and drugs and drinking and partying and bullshit that got me nowhere when I was young. But now, as I'm getting older, I'm like, I have this feeling of like trying to make up for lost time. And now I'm trying to focus all that energy on good things. But even though I'm focusing it on good things now, that missing time of me being into something for so long where I'm not there for my kids or I'm not there for my wife, like, I can't have that. I keep looking at the screen rather than the camera, but I can't have that, because I don't want that for my family. I want to have a good relationship with my children. I want to have a good relationship with my wife. So we kind of set a schedule where my schedule sucks, man. Like, I wake up, I go to work, 8-9 hours a day. And then when I get off, it's family time until the kids go to sleep, which is like at 9 o'clock. So from like 8 a.m. to like 9, my time is all accounted for. So I either have to wake up really early or stay up late to work on my stuff. And I'm like a night owl. So I go the late route. And that's why I'm always up late, and I can do streams and record with other people late at night because the kids are asleep. I could hear my kids screaming through my noise canceling headphones because they were still up. And I'm like, I can't do live streams or interviews like that because it's too distracting. So I have to do it late. And that's why these run late. And I apologize for that, but I'm glad that you can make it.
And I'm a night owl myself also.
And I can like do this all night, and I have to remind myself, because it is 11, and you're Central Time or Mountain Time. What time is it?
It's 1 a.m. here.
Oh,
it's not bad.
Okay.
I'm fine. Like, if you have to go, you have to go. But I was gonna say, just coming back like to this idea of when you get older, just like switching careers is difficult, because like you have your partner, you have all these responsibilities, and sometimes like for people, like I had he's like, I have a good job, I'm making good money, my family's great, we're able to pay all our bills, and he wants to switch to career. I'm like, look, the amount of money you're making now, kind of like it was for me when I switched careers, I took a pay cut. You might take a pay cut that might not be within budget for you to support your family. So if your wife is not able to float like half or more or whatever for the time while you build yourself up, maybe switching careers for you at the moment is not realistic. And it's all these things you have to take into account. Otherwise, like your marriage is going to, or whatever relationship is going to take a lot of like, toll, you know what I mean? And it's the way it is.
No, you're right. The money thing is a big thing too, because a lot of people who might be transitioning into a software development job later in life could very well have a good paying job that they don't want to give up, because if like you're making 90 grand a year and somebody tells you, well, you can change jobs, but you'll make 40 or 50 for the first 3 or 4 years, you're going to be like, well, I can't make that. Like I can't literally live off of half of what I make right now. So I'm just going to not do it. So then you have to consider, do I want to go into debt and like live off of credit cards to make up the difference until I start making more money? Do I want to burn through my savings and really try to give this a shot and then possibly not make enough money for 2 or 3 years until I've got experience? And it's something that a lot of people need to consider. But, the potential is there to make the money. It's, I say that I think I'm quoting Coding Phase, and I remember watching one of his videos way back when I was learning how to code, and he said something along the lines is like, I will never make less money than what I'm making now, because of like learning how to code and having these skills. And like, I'll never make less than what I'm making now. And I'm making more money than I've ever made before in my life as far as the salary goes. So just think about that. And if that's not enough incentive for you to like stick with it and and do it, then like a big incentive for me was a salary and a good paying job with benefits and all that good stuff, you know. But I don't know. Some people don't want to do it.
Obviously, it depends. Like, where you live. I was gonna say, but like, the thing with web development, exactly like you said, and Coding Phase saying how the next year you're going to learn more code, so you're going to be able to command a higher income. It's one of the only fields, regardless if you have a college degree or not, if you put in your work and you get into the door, within 3 to 5 years, there's a high possibility you're going to make 6-figure income. And there's not that many fields that you could do that with. Like my friend that kind of my mentor, now he's an architect, but I watched him. He was a music major. He didn't go to college for development, and he went to making 6-figure income. He lives in a huge house, and like he just like you, he's like me. There's nothing extraordinary with him except he just never gave up. Just kept going and became a developer. It's like, I know we use a lot of jiu-jitsu, like the metaphors here, but in jiu-jitsu, it's like you always say this to the kids because adults, they don't care about this stuff. But you said what's the difference between a white belt and a black belt? A black belt is a white belt that never quit. It sounds corny and stupid, but that's why I have the job right now, And I went from not making a lot, making a little more. Like I make $40 an hour right now. It's like, I don't know if it's good or bad. It's good for me, but like the fact that that's where I am now, and that next year, I will be making more, that blows my mind. That's insane. General advice for 24-year-olds: don't get in trouble, because I wasted 10 years of probably more than 10 years of my life doing that. And to put things in perspective, you're 24. I am 41 right now. We're going to be July 1st. But I started really applying how to code at 35. I was able to get a job, and I have another 20 years to enjoy this career. So if you put in the work now, even if it takes you 3-4 years, by 29, you're going to have an amazing job. By 35, you're probably going to be making more than 6 figures. So you're good. Just don't get in trouble, because and I know it sounds stupid, but if you do things that put you into debt, if you do things, God forbid, even worse, you go to jail, it's there's no getting back from that. I had a lot of friends who made mistakes that they just never recovered from. It's the saddest thing. So when I tell people, and you're closer to the age of my daughter, so it's giving you some fatherly advice here. It's if you just stay responsible, you're going to save yourself a lot of headaches. And I know a lot of young lads don't like to hear this, or girls, gals, whatever. But that's man, it's hard to recover from that.
General advice for a 24-year-old, just general advice, not even related to code, is that
lift weights, do deadlifts.
Your health is more important than you think.
Yeah.
And it doesn't take that much time to accomplish, it doesn't take that much effort to accomplish big things, and set your goals higher than you think that you can. Set goals so high that they feel out of reach, and see how far you can get, because man, I wasted so much time when I was drinking and partying, and even not that much of that. A lot of the time I wasted playing video games and getting high and not doing shit.
There's a interesting question. I'm 19 and JavaScript's not easy. Any advice? Yeah, you're 19. You're gonna get it. You're ahead of everybody. Just as long as you manage your ahead of us. As long as you manage your Call of Duty playing time and do more JavaScript, dude. If I was 19, you have time to make mistakes. You know what I'm saying?
You do,
when you're older, you can't. I mean, don't make mistakes.
It feels like forever when you're that age. I remember, you would have told me to think about what I was going to be doing at 35 when I was 25. I would have been I'm going to be dead at 35. Who thinks about what they're going to be doing at 35? So to even see people that are that young and this chat asking what they can, you're already so far ahead where I was at that age. Just stick to what you're doing, try to get there, improve, and just work on your goals. Set goals and try to accomplish them. That all it takes is just repetition and consistency. That's it. How do you go to apply for a web job when you have no prior work experience at all? I feel like we kind of covered that at the beginning, and you talked about that a little bit, and I talked about how I fluffed my resume with freelancing work, and I put projects on there, and I put the tech that I was using in the projects, and anything I could talk about that. that would make it look like experience. Sorry, go ahead.
So I was gonna say, like, yeah, like this, like what I realized, like the way you write your job description of your past job, if you had one, with like your development stuff, just replace the job title with the project that you built and write the description the same way, because it's the same thing if you worked at a company and used that tech, or if you worked at home, use that tech. As long as you put, like, you know, manage, you know, state with Redux and blah, 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 you know, created UI with, you know, React components, like use that bullet point, like of the stuff that you used in your project. And it's going to, you know, it doesn't matter where you get the experience. And that's kind of like, you know, I did when I first started out. It sounds like you put your projects into your resume. Like, I don't think I saw your resume, but I'm just assuming. And that's a great way to kind of showcase it. Then, you know, build, you know, 2 to 3 projects for your portfolio and be good at talking about them. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think the listing the technologies that you used in those projects is so key, because you can't just be like I made a jiu-jitsu map. Basically, all you did was put in like your location or checked your location, and it pulled up all the jiu-jitsu places nearby. I made it with React, and I used I think it might have been Gatsby at the time. I forgot the tech exactly, but I put all that in the bullet points. Like I used the Google API for the maps, and I used Gatsby to set it up, and I used styled components to style it, and I did all those things. And I made sure that each one of those texts that I used was a little bullet point in my description on the projects on my resume, because I was trying to fill my resume with as much stuff as I could, because waiting tables and parking cars, nobody cares about that when you're applying for a dev job. I mean, the experience, some of it might transfer over, like communicating with people and stuff like that when you have customer service, but in reality, customer service doesn't transfer over to working as a programmer. You kind of answered this. Yeah, 19, just keep doing it.
Yeah, you're 19. Yeah, just keep it up, keep moving.
Like, you know, I don't mean to brush you off as like you're young and whatnot, but when you're talking to 2 old men who are in their 30s and their 40s, and you're saying that you're 19 and you don't know what to do with your life, nobody does at that age. But you're learning how to code, just keep doing it.
Yeah. You're talking that problem I had like at 35. So you're already like well ahead of me. Like at 35, I was discouraged because it just wasn't good at problem solving. How do you build problem solving mindset? It's just, you just build stuff and through practice. But that's the key word, is like try to build, and through failure, you're going to get there. But honestly, at 21, you're literally my daughter's age right now. You're like, your whole life is ahead of you, that you have plenty of time. Just put the, you know, keep putting the work, you're going to get there. Like, and that's what I kind of like, you know, between Dorian and I, we're probably like almost over 100 years old, but, but the point that I'm just kidding.
Yeah, like
getting close. Yeah, 80. But the point I'm making is that to us, it's funny because we would give our arm and a leg to go back to 21, to 30.
Well,
you know what I mean?
I know what I know now. Only if I
right. Only like not to our original stupid selves, not to our original stupid selves, but like this idea. Yeah, like you're on the right track. Just keep at it. You know, follow good like role models that you see on YouTube. But the most important stuff, like what I found, like people like procrastinate through courses and don't build enough. You need to do more building on your own than taking courses. If you took like 3-4 Udemy courses, it's already too many. Like start building stuff. And I learned this lesson like really late. So now, like if you see me do coding, I built a lot of like original projects. I get stuck, I fail, they all suck, whatever. But I do that more than I do taking courses. And then once in a while, I'll look at a course to see if it has something that maybe will help me solve a problem I'm having. But like 70%, I'm building my own stuff. 30%, I'm using courses as reference. But you definitely want to get out of that mindset.
Yeah, I think you nailed it on the head. It really is just a matter of kind of working towards the same things, and over time, you practice enough, and you'll kind of understand like where the problems kind of come from. I don't know if that really makes sense, but you know, an experienced developer, if you explain something to me and like what a problem that might be happening is, I'll probably know like a good, you know, handful of places where I can start looking just to be like, okay, well, hey, like the data's not saving to the back end. Well, where do I check? Let me go check my Spring entities and see if that's all set up right. Let me go see if my front end model is referencing the correct property in the database to save to. Like, there's already things that I know, like, hey, if this is broken, how do I problem solve this? Well, I've already come across this problem so many times, or the same similar problem in different ways, that I kind of have like my key go-tos, like, all right, the first thing I'll check is
this is 1, 2, bam, bam, boom. Yeah.
And then that gives you a hint. Well, it's like, okay, well, it wasn't this, so that rules out that theory. Let me go see if it was maybe this other thing that might be causing it from what I'm already checking, because I thought this would be a good place to start. And then it's just a matter of doing it over. You know, this book that I showed earlier, I don't like plugging stuff because I do try to tell people, like,
listen,
click on the link and go buy it. Like, don't even click on my link. Like, I don't care. Like, if you want to check out this book, look for it used. Think like a programmer. It kind of
click on my link. No, just kidding. I don't have a link.
Click on his link.
I'm just kidding. I don't have a link.
It does a good job of like explaining, like thinking it logically about problems. And I think one of the first things that they talk about is like this old riddle of like, there's like a turtle,
the man and the river,
the river, the dog, and the fox and the chicken and all this stuff.
Yeah, exactly. I got this book. I'm just trying to make sure that everybody knows that. Everybody knows that I read.
How do you get the chicken across without
being
killed by the
Listen, I got that question wrong. I was like, oh, and like, but I was gonna say, like, before you brought that book out, because my segue to that would have been like, the reason why you know how to problem solve is because at some point before you made that mistake that led you on a journey of discovering something new and being like, oh, that's why that happened. And you do that enough through failure, and now you have good experience to know, like, hey, this is why this happened. That's why that happened. And you get there through building stuff and failing. Yeah, that's the ultimate way. Because let me tell you, I read that book. It didn't help me at all until I tried it in real life and was like, shit, that didn't work.
It gives you a good idea.
No, it's a good book. It's a good book. Highly. Listen, I'm going to tell you. But I'm going to say this. Like, that book, definitely worth buying and getting. So definitely pick up that book because it's really good. Clean Code is good. Cracking the interview, like maybe to make your monitor stand higher. Maybe like if you want to like, or like you want to throw at your neighbor that keeps making their dog poop on your lawn, like then that's good. Like it's a good like throwing object. I use it to intimidate my cats.
That's funny. Yeah, I think there's a few other questions. It's getting super late.
Yeah, it's late, bro. We want to did a marathon.
We're about to marathon, like the 3-hour mark. A lot of people have been sticking around. I know that I was saying that we would end this like an hour ago, but we're really going to end it now. I'm sorry if some of the questions didn't get answered. Make sure to check out some of our other videos. We might even have videos that cover topics that you may be interested in. Make sure to check out Paul's channel. It's linked in the description.
Listen.
And just keep on writing code and do your thing.
And I was going to say, like, Dorian, it's not like you do a live once in a lifetime. It's like you're going to do more, so you guys will be able to ask more questions. I also do a live every Saturday, U.S. Central Time at 6, so you guys could ask questions on that. And I would love to have you, Dorian, on there whenever you have time and opportunity.
Let's do it.
It'll be awesome. We'll have another epic stream.
Hey, I as long as it's after like 8:30.
Yeah, I'll have to move my time. That's fine. I don't care.
I can make it. It's just unrealistic for me to do it with these crazy kids running around screaming.
Yeah. No, we'll do something that works for you and your time, and I'll just plan it ahead of time to give people the feedback.
For sure.
But I'll be honest with you, because I had a blast. Like, I feel like outside of like this whole program stuff, I think we would just be like good friends just in general.
Man,
it's just such a good
I can talk about jiu-jitsu and code for days, so I'm sure that we'll never run out of stuff to talk about. Yeah. So definitely we got to do it again. And this was a lot of fun. I'm glad we did it. It's been a long time coming, and I'm glad that we finally got around to it. It's almost a 3-hour
awesome
stream. Everyone, thanks again. We're gonna sign off.
Thank you guys for everything. Yep. If you didn't subscribe to Dorian's channel, go definitely subscribe.
Only after you subscribe to Paul's channel.
I mean, you could subscribe to my channel if you want, whatever. Listen, I don't know I need like few subscribers. I don't know how many I need now to get to 2,000. Like that would, help me if you guys, but you don't have to. You know what I'm saying?
There we go. I'm gonna try to. I'll post this on. My biggest following is YouTube, so I'll post it on my community tab.
Listen, I was gonna say, whatever income I don't make on my YouTube, I make it up on my OnlyFans channel. So that's fine.
There you go.
I'm not
worried
about it.
That in the description.
Don't. It's a very simple concept. It's like a 40-year-old dude eating cheeseburgers naked. That's it. It's, people pay big money.
Listen,
I got my drawers on. Like, it's fine. But this is the crazy thing. Do you know why I had this idea? And this is the crazy thing. Somebody says, like, Paul, why didn't you go with it? And then I realized OnlyFans is so crazy. I would probably make more money eating cheeseburgers half naked than I would, working as a developer, because the world is crazy and I refuse to do that. I'm like, no thanks.
It's nuts. We're gonna go off topic. We're not gonna end this right now. But I just saw mukbang, like people on YouTube who make this MSAMR. They just eat food.
Oh, yeah.
Like all they do is food.
Oh my god.
Them eating
there's
food.
There's this like husky that opens presents, eats food and different fruits, and I binge watched the channel for 4 hours, and then I'm like, what are you doing with yourself? You have like you just gave 4 hours to watching a dog open presents and eat strawberries. Like, what is wrong with you? Like, get back to work, you stupid moron. That's how I started talking to myself, actually. But yeah, like, it's insane. Like, there's so many, and that, like, but that's a good point. Like, I was going to say, like, becoming a web developer, you do kind of have to like it, because the truth is there's so many other ways to make money. And I'm not suggesting OnlyFans, guys. I'm just saying, but there's so many different ways of doing it that, like, like we're doing it because we enjoy it to some degree. There's something that it brings enough value to our life to put in the hard work to be able to, put in the work, to get to where we want to go. But there's so many different ways to make money. So, like, don't think like everybody has to be a developer. But this was a lot of fun.
Enjoying it made it a lot easier to want to continue to learn. And I think that's one of the key things that you need to become a self-taught, because if you don't like it, what's the point of, like, you're not going to be able to teach yourself to code if you are not enjoying it.
Yeah.
All right. That's it. For real this
thanks
time.
everybody. For real, 100%.
And we'll see you next time.
See you guys later.